Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Gamestars League Elimination Day. That's right. It's day 9 of the competition. We're going to go back through our groups and get rid of half of the remaining players over the next 2 days. What's up, everybody? I'm Andrew Guy. Joining me today is Eric Benamou, our former world champion head coach of Team Liquid. Eric, today is a very big day for GSL.
This is what I love. I am one of those people that live for elimination matches. I think I'm probably the person that has most lived through them in the past. I spent the whole season in CRL being on an elimination brink after like only 4 matches of being in the league. So I mean, I live for it. I love the adrenaline. And this is where you find out which players are really meant for competition, and like you see who can mentally be there.
Yeah, I mean, we talk a lot about in regular sports and especially in Clash Royale, like that playoff mentality. Once you get into the East or Western playoffs, once you get to World Finals, it's a completely different game. And I'm expecting that we'll see a lot of that here today. But a big part of that are the cards that have been successful so far in Gamestars League. We're in day 9 of competition. And Eric, while these cards have been very successful, what's very interesting about today is that all the players that we're seeing have to rock the same decks that we saw in their original day of group stage competition.
Yeah, and in those original days, we saw a lot of golems, but I don't see any golem up here on my screen for the cards that work. So that's going to be a big problem for those golem players. Not only that, but look, the first time around, they did not play it as well as they should have. They didn't really understand when to push, when not to push. They had a lot of time off. So look, you're looking at these cards and you don't have them, okay? Your golem deck doesn't have them. I hope at least you took the time to understand why you lost, how to change your game and really make it work.
Exactly, because a lot of what we've talked about, and you can see right there in the bottom center, we have a 2% selection rate with a 16% win rate. Now, what I was going to say is one of the biggest things that we've talked about during the broadcast, Eric, is obviously matchup and deck selection can be really tough, and it can put you in a really rough situation. However, a lot of the issues that we saw with decks not being successful was actually that they weren't being played to their utmost, potential. They were, not a lot of good spell value coming in, maybe getting too aggressive with your big cards, maybe not building pushes from the back. It was a lot more of those cards and those decks being slightly misplayed than it was strictly a matchup conversation.
Absolutely, and I think that's the only reason why we don't have Golem at 0% win rate, because we saw Eternity actually know how to play it, and he was successful with it for the most part. He had a tough go around. We know that the matchups were very hard. One Hive had prepared perfectly for it, but like you said, we saw a lot of E-Giant, and we saw how dominant it was in the right hands, and the same thing with Golem. So now that you have the decks, you know that, look, I cannot change these decks. This is what I came in here with. You need to go back. This is part about being a pro player. It's not all about practice. You have to understand why you lost. Go back and watch the games. What did I do wrong and what did Eternity do right? And that's where you get that advantage.
So here is an overall look at what we've done so far in the competition. As I said, this is day 9. Each one of these groups got their own individual day, and all the top players from these said groups, Lucas, So-Called, Burkan, Financier, Broken, One Hive, Hugo, and SB, they are all chilling, hanging out. They are pushed on through to our finals where they can choose 3 new decks. On the other side of it, everyone at the bottom of these lists, they have been eliminated. It's all about 2nd and 3rd place. Mateja and Blaz, Blairon and Denbeer, Gas and Dimas, and Predator and Johnny Maloney are going to be the 8 guys competing today. Half of them will be eliminated, but Eric, they have to play the exact same decks that they ran day 1, and some of them are even going to be coming into rematches.
They sure will. And look, we have 3 players here separately in 3 different groups that were the head of their groups, right? The people that we thought were gonna win for sure 2-0 easy in Mateja, in Dimas, and Predator, and now they have one match that decides their fate. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing how they react, if experience will play a big factor in elimination matches, and how they handle, you know, the opponent knowing their decks, and also them knowing what their opponent's decks consist of and what they start off with.
So the first 2 matches of our day, Mateja, Blaz, Denbeer, and Blairon, they're all going to be meeting each other for the very first time here in Gamestars League. But Gas, Dimas, Predator, and Johnny Maloney, they're all going to be rematches. And each one of these will be best of 5s, ladies and gentlemen. Best of 5s. Every single player has to bring 3 decks to competition. They have to win with all 3 of those decks. That means that some of those crazy decks out there that we saw early on, they have to be successful today if those players want to move forward. And I see that chuckle on your face. It's because there's some pretty tough decks out there, and they're going to be big mountains to climb. When we're talking about that Golem clone deck specifically, pops into my mind. And Eric, this is what we saw from Group A a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, we saw, look, Blaz, we know what his struggles were. He decided he was going to come in here with a Golem clone deck, and he struggled a lot with it. He ended up getting the win in that last game, but look, you didn't play Mateja. Mateja played very, very well, and then he ran up against Lucas, who was just on fire that day. But this isn't the same as when you were playing that 3rd and 4th place match. You're gonna have to play that Golem perfectly. The only thing that I can say that I like for him is, 1, Mateja has a deck with no spell, and the other 2 spells are fireballs in the big spells, which aren't great against clones. So overall, he has a shot, but it's not great.
Yeah, that Golem deck can actually match up pretty well against 2 of the decks on the screen. The ones that you were talking about, Fireball obviously being the card, not going to be great to clean up the clone. Royal Delivery going to help with all of that, but a lot of single target high DPS as well, and not a lot of splash troops. So right now we're going to see Mateja going in aggressive. Fisherman at the bridge with skeletons behind, goblins, spear goblins to catch by Blaz.
Yeah, and for those, if you're wondering which was Mateja, it's up top. Just I assume most people know, but just to clarify that the name is different, but Blaz is Blazer or Blazer, and up top you have Mateja with that name change. And look, like you said, he has a chance. He actually has. It couldn't match up better for him. Also, knowing that he struggled a lot against Night Witch because he had Skarmy, he had Bats, and none of Mateja's decks have Night Witch.
Yeah, and Mateja here, honestly, looking like he's struggling with his camera a bit. As you can see, he keeps resetting it over and over. I'm not sure if he's using the camera on his phone. Is that even possible to do?
I think he is, because whenever he moves his phone, the camera moves. This is a new technology here, the Samsung S55 from the future. Clash and cam at the same time.
Yeah, it's like a POV VR of what it's like to be playing as Mateja. So here we go. Wall Breakers going down the left-hand side. Spear Goblins down the right. And we can see that both these guys just kind of hanging out, sitting back. I like that Blaz is being a little bit more patient, and I like that he's running this deck first to kind of hopefully put himself in a better situation matchup-wise down the road.
Yeah, and look, I thought Blaz was going to come out with the Golem deck first, to be honest. I think it was a better option just to, you know, see if you can get that matchup early, because if you end up beating the deck that matches up badly against your Golem, then it's like, you know, that you want Mateja to stay with that deck. You don't want him to stray away from it, and if you beat it easily, he might switch and then you might struggle. So I think I don't really love the decision, but I love what Mateja's doing here. Start from the back. You have log for the wall breakers every time, so that's not really going to cause any issues. The only problem that I see here with Mateja's deck is the lack of Hunter. When you don't have Hunter, you have Musketeer, you can't really take care of these recruits more than one at a time, and the log is always going in on the wall breakers.
Yeah, a lot of single target DPS, which you see the Fireball coming down on the right-hand side with the Electro Spear. Nice defense there on the Musketeer getting pushed away. Skeletons do come down, but they're not very effective because of that Fireball. Musketeer does stay on the board. Now we see Mateja stacking 2 Musketeers, which is very, very good for him, and getting on the offensive. Maybe we see some high... There's a high Hunter, Spear Goblins to protect the Hunter.
Yeah, and this is going to get 1 hit at least, and if that Musketeer also is protected, which it is, very nicely played by Mateja here, and slowly he's taking control of this game, and it was all because well, it was all because of one thing, and now it turned all because of two things. He missed a fireball, and it was the fact that Mateja cycled originally that RG in the back, which allowed him to have it back in cycle before Blaz had his recruits. So the defense was a lot harder for Blaz.
Really nice fireball plus log there, cleaning up everything off the board. Electro Spirit comes in as high as well, and you see Mateja really working the cycle right now. And I agree with what you were saying earlier, Eric. I think it was really important for Blaz to kind of play that golem deck first, because even if he loses it, then he narrows the possibilities for what he's going to be going up against. This deck actually matched up pretty well when you're talking about that golem deck. Tons of single target DPS, the Electro Spirit to help clean up clones, yes, but otherwise a pretty difficult, you know, defense for Mateja down the road. So we'll see how Blaz is going to have to match up, you know, in his next game, knowing that this deck is out of contention, and that does make those other two decks, you know, obviously the choices that Mateja has to make, and they match up just a bit better.
Yeah, and he really needs to get that golem clone in, because like we said, one of Mateja's decks actually struggles a lot against it. So it's not even like you're risking that much, and you want to have a game on the board. I think the other matchups were even tougher, and when you play someone with so much experience, you don't want to let him get comfortable in the set.
Yeah, Mateja is a guy that, you know, when we came into Gamestars League, he was a name that you and I are both pretty familiar with, and we were surprised to see him lose in day one to Lucas, but Lucas played some very clean Clash Royale. And I like what we saw out of Blaze today, or Blaz. It was a little bit more calm, a little bit more calculated, but it still felt like he just never had control of that game.
I think it all came down to Mateja's play. I think in this matchup, if Mateja plays perfectly, he'll continue to win it, and you saw him understand the matchup. Early on, there was an RG on the bridge. He realized that's not going to work, so he went RG in the back, forced out the recruits, and then quickly cycled back to another one before he had enough elixir for recruits. That then all that cycle, you know, went away, right? He had it the way he wanted. Blaz was controlling the match, but once he lost his cycle, it ended up being Hunter and then Elite Barbarians, and then he was all out of sort, and that's when Mateja took control of it.
Yeah, you saw Mateja from the opening moves there of the last game to just immediately work on getting his cycle out of the way. He was Fisherman, Skeletons right away, you know, dropping Skellies in the back, Fisherman at the bridge, and then that cycle that he kept up with the entire game was why he was able to get that second Royal Giant down so quickly. And that is really one of the most important parts of success with that deck that we just saw, Eric. That Royal Giant deck can cycle so fast, especially in double and triple. You've got to figure out a way to get at least two of them on the board, or consecutive ones on the board.
Yeah, that's definitely the key. If you can get two on the board, it's great, but just as long as you can get the other one down quick enough before your opponent can get back into his cycle, into his defensive cycle, that's usually how you win. And most of the pro players and the players that have that experience with it, you'll always see them start at least one RG in the back per match.
And one thing that we saw last game, excuse me, were a few mistakes interaction-wise from Blaz. We saw a miner come in a little bit high to catch a Fisherman at the bridge, so the miner didn't create any sort of counter push. And then, of course, that missed fireball late game. You know, mistakes that get mistakes in Clash Royale is definitely one where you're playing against someone like Mateja who's going to punish you for that.
Exactly, and it's something we saw early on in this competition, right? We saw a lot of misspells, or not even misspells, but misused spells from these players, and it's something that we commented on a lot. It got better as time went on and as the competition kept going, but this is one of those players that had those issues in the first time around, and he needs to make sure not to commit those if he wants to move on.
I like the pressure here from Mateja. Yeah. That bandit coming out every single time is making it so that miner is never in cycle. And just like that, we see Blaz call an early good game, 2 games in a row. So far, this opening set from Group A, second and third place between Mateja and Blaz, has been severely one-sided. And now Blaz has to go into one deck 3 more times if he can win, of course, in the next game. But right now, this does feel like it's all sewn up with only 30 seconds remaining.
Look, I always, like I say, I always believe in reverse sweeps, but the level difference that I'm seeing from the play today, not generally that one player is so much better than the other, but the way they've been playing today, Mateja has just been on another level.
Yeah, it feels like Blaz is almost resigned, whereas Mateja at the finals. But of course, this is a best of 5, not a best of 3, so we still have a chance for Blaz, as you just said, Eric, to reverse sweep. He's got all 3 decks locked and loaded. He knows what the one deck is that's left from Blaz. Do you think this is a good opportunity to bust out Golem Clone, or is that last deck from Mateja the one that matches up the worst?
Look, at this point, I'd roll with it, right? You throw a golem in the back, throw everything behind it, toss a clone there, maybe get Mateja a little tilted to losing a match like that, right? And then you could try and swing it in your favor. And Blaz needs to channel his inner SB from yesterday that
yes.
had that reverse sweep. So you know it's possible. But look, man, if you have that golem clone deck, you should feel comfortable with it, because I don't think anyone that genuinely picks that deck unless they play it a lot. So I say go for it.
Eric referring to SB and Abdullah Imad yesterday, who battled it out in Group H, where Abdullah went up 2-0 with his patented Lava Hound deck with Bomber and Skarmy, but then his Electro Giant deck was his demise, as SB was able to bounce back in games 3, 4, and 5 for a reverse sweep. So it can be done, but can it be done right now by Blazer? And I just don't know. He's got a lot to do. He's got 3 decks to choose from. Let's see what he decides.
He's leaking this much, it feels like Golem to me, and I hope it is. I at least want to see it, man. I'm not a fan of it, but you know what? We're already here. It's already one of your deck choices, and you don't give it to me. Come on, man.
He decides to go Lava Hound instead. After leaking a bunch of Elixir, he's leaked 8 Elixir with his opponent getting 4 on the board. His opponent leaking 5 less than him, so probably not wanting to commit too much before getting that Lava Hound down. But as I was just mentioning, Abdullah yesterday was able to really put the hurt on by hyper-aggressive Lava Hound plays, and a big part of his success, Eric, was not defending.
Yeah, I was just about to say that Abdullah would have never dropped those dragons there. He would have put them behind the lava, and we would have seen absolutely all his Elixir go down behind that lava push. But you saw SB in the interview yesterday. He said no one plays like Abdullah. I said it also when I was watching. And look, I don't expect Blast to do that, but I don't think he can do that either. Look at the deck style is so different, with the Fire Spirits not really provoking much defense on Mateja's side.
Yeah, the Fire Spirits there not being used is the Skarmy, which yesterday we saw was really, really effective. And honestly, now that he's running up against a Valkyrie, Skarmy maybe wouldn't have been the best situation. And there is the Skarmy, so excuse me, Skarmy plus Fire Spirits. And now this graveyard does come in. Mega Minion tanking skeletons behind. Those skeletons are getting tanked for, so more response has to come down. And those skeletons at the bridge get a couple hits in.
They do, but I honestly thought he was going to be falling behind a lot more on Elixir than he actually is, and he's fine. It looked like he spent way more than Mateja, but I guess overall with the interactions, I actually like the position he's in. He got the win condition out. He's on the offensive now. If he wants to lava in front of this, he's okay with that, because the delivery also just came out, and he decides to let the Inferno Dragon go. And I'm not so sure. I think at this point you should get a little hyper aggressive with the way the cycle was.
Yeah, and we'll see right now if it does pay off. He's going to go Lava Loon in the back right-hand corner here. Valkyrie at the bridge, maybe Graveyard as soon as it crosses. No, instead he goes Lightning offensively is Blaz with Skeleton Dragons behind. Here we go. This is the push that he's been trying to build the entire game. Second Tesla does come down. Fireball on top of everything. Balloon gets taken off the board. Lava Pups, very, very little damage in, and that was a beautiful defense by Mateja.
It was, but I don't think he could withstand another one, because Blaz didn't even use the Lightning onto a Tesla. If he's able to hold on, he's leaking so much Elixir, and he was up 4. You cannot let that happen when you're playing a lava deck. You need that. What you're fighting for all game is that Elixir advantage, right? You want that. You want to be able to drop that lava and know that nothing is going to come on the other side, because you're up so much.
And it's important to note that, because he leaks an Inferno Dragon's worth of Elixir, which is what he drops anyway in defense on the other side of the board. And you have to remember that we're in double and triple now, or double Elixir now, so if you spend 7 on the Lava Hound, you're still going to have that Inferno Dragon ready to go Elixir-wise. Balloon does get a drop on the right-hand side. Archers plus Tesla and Mega Minion there, 607 to 1424, and Blaz playing very scared, even though he is very much in the lead.
Yeah, and he can't even defend that easily when you actually look at the deck, so he needs to be very careful with what he's doing here, especially knowing that that Loon only connected because of a mistake from Mateja on that Tesla, and this could get very scary for him. It's not enough to just lightning around. He decides to solo Loon now, going the Yeah, this is scary for him. Now he's down on elixir. You're gonna see a Valk with the fireball. There's the fireball.
Fireball's in. There's the Valk on top. Fire Spirit's behind, and that offensive push from Mateja was just a little bit slow on the draw. Now we see a high Mega Minion once again. Royal Delivery on top. Lightning comes in on the tower. 79 HP remains, and that death damage will not get there. Nice pull with the Tesla. Arrows are in, and Blaz, while playing very, very cautious, does pick up the win here in game number 3.
I would have liked to see some more graveyards come out when he had more elixir than Blast, because he can't defend that easily. You do have a fireball, he has a Scarby, he has dragons, which everything dies. So I'm not really sure why he didn't go all in. You know that you can't just sit there because he's gonna cycle the lightnings, and I think it was a little bit over defensive on both sides. When they had an advantage, they kind of just sat there and waited to see what their opponent would do. And on Mateja's side, look, you still have to win with this deck. That wasn't a great matchup, and now you have to beat Golem Clone at least once. And look, I'm not sure how well that matches up either.
Yeah, that last game was an interesting one. It felt like kind of a game of missed opportunities on both sides of the board. There was a lot of moments where Blaz maybe reset instead of getting hyper aggressive with his Lava Hound. It does end up working out, so, you know, we can stop maybe criticizing that, even though it did feel very, very slow playing. And on the other side of it with Mateja, every single time he dropped that Valkyrie down at the bridge, there was always the same defense, and it felt like he just didn't pick it apart the way that he needed to. You even called out that fireball the one time that was just a little slow on the draw, maybe too much elixir spent at the bridge, but I was a little surprised to see the exact same defense from Blaz pay off for over 2 minutes.
Yeah, and like you said, it did end up working for Blaz. There were a bunch of mistakes on Mateja's side, which we didn't see in the first 2 games. He missed the Tesla, and this is it. This is the Golem. If he can win with this, Mateja has to be very, very careful, because the reverse sweep is real. When you lose to 2 decks, Lava and Golem, man, that tilt is coming.
Yeah, it really does get in your head. And now we see this Night Witch Golem clone getting put together. Maybe does already have, yes, I assume he has clone in his hand already. We have a nice push here. Lumberjack behind, Night Witch behind. There's the high fast. We need the clone. No clone is in, and that feels like a slightly missed opportunity.
Yeah, I would have gone for it there 100%. When you have a lumberjack, look at that lumberjack on the left, how much damage it did. You always want to clone when you have a lumberjack, because any defense that it comes down to delivery, everything will just rage up everything else. So I think you're right, a little bit of a missed opportunity, but maybe he wanted to learn from his mistakes last time and take it a little bit more relaxed.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, that's definitely fair. We gave him a hard time about being hyper aggressive in the last outing with this deck. I would have loved to see the clone come in there when you have the Night Witch down with the Lumberjack and spare bats, and that's all within a clone. That is just a massive amount of offense that you can create that would have put your opponent in a slight elixir hole. Now we see this again. This is maybe the 3rd time in 3 games where we see Blaz dropping units up very, very high at the bridge. It ends up working out, and now he's getting a decent counter push with the bats, but just getting a little more help from your tower, I think, would have been better.
Yeah, I think what Blast saw there is he thought the graveyard was going to come down, and Mateja played the good old bait, and he baited out that Night Witch, which is a very important part of the clone. When you get that Night Witch clone, then it spawns 700 bats upon death damage, and the other one not dying. That's when you get a lot of value. He missed the fireball onto the lumberjack, though.
Yeah, that's a big missed fireball. Now the Lumberjack gets picked up by the Valkyrie. Rage goes down. All the units are in. Clone comes in just in time, and that is a tower down, and we are all even, Eric, going into game number 5.
Yeah, now it's the real pressure goes on to Mateja. You just lost twice in a row. Blast has 100% momentum on his side. You have to be feeling good, and we spoke about it. As much as we don't like that Golem deck, it actually doesn't match up badly against Mateja.
Yeah, and now we know exactly what we're going to get, right? Game number 5, there's only 1 deck available from both of these players. Mateja has to rock back that exact same deck for a 3rd time in a row, and it does feel like he's been struggling it with a bit. Obviously, last game was a bit of a matchup conversation, but what do you think we can kind of expect here with this matchup? Again, what does Mateja need to do to improve this play with this graveyard deck?
I think, one, he's not able to actually get any graveyards down, and this one was a tough matchup, I'm not gonna lie. I think on the Lava, he didn't take advantage of opportunity, and he missed some Teslas that would have saved him the game as well. This one, I don't see much possibility to actually win. My biggest issue right now is the fact that he's going up against a recruits with hunter deck, and if you just save those recruits over and over again for the graveyard, it's almost impossible to actually get any damage from the graveyard, and then just, you know, some good minor chip could actually win you the game if you're Blaz.
Yeah, and then you talk about spell responses to the graveyard. You have those spear goblins, which are going to be great to help clean up the graveyard. Obviously, the fireball can clean them up, but those fireballs are always going to come down late. And as you said, those royal recruits, we're looking at the top left deck here from Mateja and the bottom right from Blaz. That is the matchup that we're going to get here in game number 5. And it does feel like a slight advantage towards Blaz, but we have to see how he plays this deck.
This is that time where you need patience. Patience is key.
Yeah.
Even though you have a wall breakers deck, you need to understand that, look, those wall breakers are probably never going to connect with the archers, with the Tesla, with the Valk, the royal delivery being there. So don't force them. You don't need to. If you want to force out a little bit of defense, go for it, but don't be hyper aggressive trying to minor wall breakers, all this stuff. Just defend well, minor chip your way onto this, and you could win this game.
Yeah, and that really does feel like it's going to be the key to victory for Blaz, is being okay and comfortable and confident enough in his minor gameplay that he's okay with just chipping away. And already we see 8 elixir spent for Blaz's 2, but then we see Blaz leaking an insane amount of elixir again. Drop the recruits in the back. You know what your opponent has. Drop anything in the back.
I would have liked to see a minor on tower. There's just he used the skellies. He used the archers, so his cheap defenses are gone. The Mega Minion doesn't catch a minor, so just take advantage and get some chip or force a Valk, right? If you force a Valk, you're golden, because then he has no real tank for a graveyard. And if he does graveyard in single elixir like that, you probably end up winning the game. So I'm not really sure why we didn't see a minor come in, get some chip damage. And look, I said you got to play patience is key, but too much patience is not the key.
I mean, he's just giving his opponent a massive elixir advantage, and I guess it's okay when you talk about leaking elixir and then a defensive unit getting on the board, and then that Tesla just coming and going, and now you guys are both just leaking elixir, but it does just feel like a very odd start here from Blaz.
Yeah, and look, double elixirs coming up, and he's going to get very aggressive, most likely, Blaz, because he... knowing him, look at these barbarians. This is what I don't want to see, right? I don't want to see the minor and all this stuff come in, because it's just not necessary. You're giving too much value to something like a Tesla and Skellies when you don't want to see that. All you have to do is send in the minors alone, chip away little by little, and then just defend perfectly. We saw him be way too patient, and now we saw him be too aggressive. You need to find that middle ground, or Mateja's gonna make you pay for it later on.
And I think it was pretty evident when you looked at that last push. The only damage that came in was from that minor chip, and that minor chip maybe would have gotten 1 less shovel's worth of damage had all the rest of that not been sent and spent by Blaz. But conversely, you know, a lot of elixir came out from Mateja defensively, but he's okay to do that, right? Because if you overspend on defense with the graveyard deck, then you just get a good counter push, and we get a missed fireball there from Blaz, which has become almost a signature move now in game number 5.
Yeah, and like you said, Mateja did spend a lot of elixir, but look at the difference when you look at the deck and how they cycle. He's okay because it's so much faster for him to get to his win condition than it is for Blaz. So if I have to spend a little bit extra, that's fine. I have a cheap cycle. I can get back on offense very, very quickly, so it doesn't play to Blaz's deck here.
Yeah, and as I was just saying, any overspend on defense by Mateja turns into a counter push, whereas Blaz's overspends on defense turn into these very kind of odd segmented pushes. And here we go. First graveyard comes in. Valkyrie getting tanked for by the skeletons. Fireball going to land on those E-barbs. Valkyrie goes to the E-barbs, and a very, very minimal amount of damage in, but a massive amount of elixir in favor of Mateja. Delivery going to clean all that up, Tesla down, and we're in a very good spot if you're a red fan.
Yeah, and it all came down to the panic button. He hit the panic button with that minor when it wasn't necessary. He didn't want to take 1 Valk hit, which he probably wouldn't have anyway. And look, when your panic button is your chip damage, you need to be very careful. You cannot do that. You need to be very calculated. We've seen it over the last 2 days when we saw that amazing gameplay from One Hive and from SB. They made those 1 elixir troops get all the value because they calculated it perfectly.
I really like that push there from Blaz. Miner gets on tower, Fireball comes in, cleans up an Archer, hits the Valkyrie. Now he goes, wall breakers to the right-hand side, maybe just to bait out the delivery. Nope, delivery does come down late, and now he has a lead on both sides. Blaz is trying to steal this set from Mateja, who I guarantee you is starting to feel the pressure, Eric.
Yeah, he's definitely feeling the pressure, though. Those recruits are on tower, and another missed Tesla from him. I'm not really sure what's going on. Tesla's known to be one of the easiest buildings to work with just because of how much that radius pull is and how easy it is to place. But he's missed 3 over the past 2 games, and look how much damage he's taken.
Fireball in on top of that Hunter. Looks like we may have lost Mateja's camera as he's maybe focusing, doubling down here on his offense. There you see an early delivery to try to catch that Miner. Valkyrie plus delivery on top of the Miner. 1,003 HP remaining. Another Fireball in on the left-hand side with a Graveyard. Hyper aggressive play in the final 12 seconds.
Yeah, and this is GG. Blaz is going to end up taking this unless something very weird happens here. I'm not really sure. He just needs to defend, and he wins this with a nice little reverse sweep.
Unbelievable. Blaz pulls off the reverse sweep. You go 1, 2, 3 times in a row with that Valkyrie Archer's Graveyard deck out of Mateja, and he could just not close things out. First time against Lava Hound, second time against Golem Clone, and the third time right there you just saw recruits plus wall breakers plus minor chip damage. There was about a moment in that game where Blaz just turned on the nitro and just said, see you later, man.
It looked like the series was over after the first 2 games, but that's when it comes into play. What we spoke about early, why not use that Golem deck? Why not use that Lava deck? It's so important to pick the right decks, because it feels like if he would have used those early on, we would have never even had to see a reverse sweep. Blaz had complete control once he realized, look, these decks actually match up very well against Mateja.
Yeah, and I have to give credit where credit's due. Blaz seemed like he was resigned early on in the set, but honestly, maybe it was just hyper-focused. I mean, going down 2 games to 0 in a best-of-5 feels pretty rough, especially when you have to expect that your opponent knows what you're going to be running in the next few games, right? You only have a couple options, and he knows what he has to run, so he could just kind of prepare for those encounters and for those interactions. And this was just a lot of what we saw early on, Eric. Easy money for Mateja.
Yeah, like I said, the first 2 games, I really thought this series was over just because the difference in gameplay, what we were seeing. But we saw not only a shift in Blaz's mentality, but a very big shift in Mateja with those missed Teslas and those micro interactions that weren't going on in the first 2 games.
Yeah, and there you see it. He picks up games 3 and 4, and then you see right here winning out by 240 HP and a slight smile on Blaz's face, which is more than I think we've seen in this competition at all from him so far, and a very well played best of 5. Blaz will be joining Lucas GSM from Group A and working their way to our international finals. They get to sit back and hang out until a couple weeks from now, where they will be facing off once again, and another one of them will be eliminated and taking another step closer to $30,000. Are Lucas, GSM, and Blaz. So it'll be a lot of fun to see that rematch if we do get it. Now it's on to Group B, Eric. On to Group B. One more person needs to be eliminated, and we have Denbeer and Blairon, who have not played each other yet.
And look, if you're those underdogs coming in, Gas and Johnny Meloni, in this one, there's not really that much of an underdog because they both played around the same level, but Blaz just gave a lot of hope to everyone else that you can take out that favorite in the group and that favorite in the best of 5. So Blaz, congratulations to you, and good job on giving hope to everyone else.
Yeah, and I think another really great thing to highlight for Blaz is that he gets to change up his decks. When you go to the international finals, you do get to select 3 more decks that you get to bring to competition. This is still technically the group stage, which is why these players have to run back the same 3 decks and win with the same 3 decks that we saw on their first day of competition. So now Blairon from Albania going up against Denbeer here in our next set. And this one is going to be an interesting conversation. Obviously, we're going to get the decks on screen here soon, but it's another matchup in Group B where the 2 of these guys did not play each other.
They didn't play each other, but from what I remember, they were basically playing around the same level. I didn't see one very much outperform the other, and I don't have that much expectations from one over the other. So it might come down to those matchups and that deck choice. Like we see here, Sokol did beat Blairon in a 3-2, but he ended up winning this whole group, right? So Denbeer, although he beat Nagibator 3-0, he ended up losing to the same person that Blairon lost to. So there's not really much for us to know from that.
So here are the decks that we have, and one thing that you'll notice immediately is that Denbeer was already on that Mama P.E.K.K.A train, which is going to do a lot of great work against that Royal Giant, the E-Barbs in two separate, or in all three decks, that Mega Knight. So the Mama P.E.K.K.A is a great matchup, but that's only in one of his decks. Otherwise, we do have that Valkyrie, that very, very strong control deck at the bottom left-hand side of your screen, that Wallbreakers deck I saw Morton pushing with yesterday. It's very, very strong, but it is a lot of control, so it is very unforgiving when you start making mistakes.
It is, and we also have a mirror match possibility here with the top left deck from Denbeer and the bottom right deck from Blairon, which I you know, we've seen mirror matches. I would like to see it just because it's one of those mirror matches that's actually exciting to watch. You never know who's gonna Mega Knight high, who's gonna go in with the Hoggies, who's gonna make that small adjustment that wins them the game. And apart from that, like you said, the P.E.K.K.A is actually a very, very good matchup for him, but it can only be used once. That only gives you one game. And it's not only the fact that it's a P.E.K.K.A, it's the fact that it's a P.E.K.K.A graveyard, and there is no poison, there is no arrows, there is none of that on the other side. So overall, that is probably going to get him a win on the board, but he still needs to win with the other ones.
Now, the one thing to recognize, Denbeer from the Ukraine, he did have the same deck as you were just pointing out. Top left matches bottom right, but Blairon had a 100% win rate with that deck, whereas Denbeer had a 25% win rate. Now, obviously, if you're coming into the set late, it's the only deck that you have, you might run into some bad matchups. But just strictly on paper, it does seem that Blairon might be just a bit more comfortable with it than Denbeer. So here we go. Group B, elimination day. One of these guys is going to be gone after this BO5. The other one's going to take home a little bit of money and work their way a little bit farther towards those international finals and that $30,000 prize.
And here we go. Game number one. We're going to see, we're not going to see a mirror match, obviously, from the start of this, but we are going to see that Mother Witch come down that we didn't even see in one deck in the previous set.
Yeah, very, very surprising, right? No Electro Giant, no Mother Witch, not a lot of things in the current meta, and just like that, we have a ton of damage early on. Flying Machine going to come down with the King Tower activation, and that's one of those situations where you almost say thank you to your opponent because this Princess Tower is going to have so little HP that King Tower damage is actually helpful down the line. 334 remains and only a minute and 10 seconds of gameplay in the books.
Yeah, and if you're Blairon, that is not the start you wanted for this set. And it's going to be very tough to get back into it as well because, like you said, there's so much damage on that right-hand side that he doesn't really have to worry about it. Denbeer he's thinking in his head, that King Tower activation is pretty much irrelevant for me. I already took that tower down. I don't need that extra damage. And both of them had the same idea here with the Mother Witch, just on opposite sides.
And if you look at the bottom of the screen there, you'll see Electro Wizard plus E-Barbs, Heal Spirit, and Log. That was all used in the very, very first interaction. 13 elixir spent. The problem was that 13 elixir didn't turn into any sort of counter push. It ran right into a Mega Knight, and that is why so much damage comes in on that right-hand side. And you add a little bit of piggy damage in there as well with insult to injury.
Yeah, and that tower is basically done on the right, and as much as I usually like RGs in the back, you have to understand that there's elite barbarians here as well. So even if you get that Mega Knight out of the way, the highest DPS is still available, and that's what we're going to see right here. A good fireball out of him, but that's still going to go down, and he spent a lot. I really like the way that he's defending here. It's a very smart and efficient defense.
Yeah, and you see, though, Denbeer here, he gets just enough on the board to create enough pressure in both lanes. They're even in Elixir. Actually, down in Elixir is Blairon, who is probably just going to sacrifice the game at this point. He does try to go aggressive again. Royal Giant at the bridge, and I guarantee you there will be something there to respond. Yep, Zappies plus Flying Machine plus E-Barbs.
And look, good positioning on the E-Barbs. Make sure he didn't give up any fireball value. Blairon is checking behind to see where the match went because it is over. And you know what? It is what it is, my friend. There, you just saw someone reverse sweep, so don't get too down on yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I think he needed to do a little bit better job of studying his opponent, knowing what deck he was going to run into, right? You only have to memorize 3 decks today. That's it. You know what decks you're going to bring to competition. You know exactly what decks your opponent is going to bring to competition. So, as we pointed out before, there's some players out there that when that very first card is played, even in their second matchup of the day, they know all the rest of the 7 cards. That's exactly what we needed to see from Blairon, because he should have known when that card came out and when those other cards came out, the E-Barbs, that he could not just spend at the bridge because he was going to run into a Mega Knight.
And this is also another problem. We spoke about it early on, right? Denbeer, you pointed out, he only had a 25% win rate with that deck that he just won with. And now he still has the P.E.K.K.A available, which we said is almost going to be pretty much a set win, a match win in this set, which would put him at 2 wins already. So Blairon has to be very careful here. He just gave up a win to Denbeer's lowest win percentage deck.
Yeah, and it felt like, you know, some of the biggest problems with that was just the hyper aggression early on. And then from that moment, Denbeer never let off the gas. He just stayed aggressive, stayed aggressive. We didn't even see the Royal Piggies till the very, very end there to take that right-hand tower. But the overspend at the bridge battle early on was what did Blairon in game number 1. Still a lot of Clash Royale to be played here in this set. We're going to see if he can bounce back here in game number 2 and forget about what just happened.
And if I'm Denbeer, I would like to use a P.E.K.K.A here and secure a 2-0 lead. And he's not going to. He's going to go with that control deck. The reason I say I would go with that P.E.K.K.A is because when you put your opponent in a 2-0 hole, it's a lot tougher mentally. We know it didn't pay off last match, but I think it was just really matchup dependent. In this match, it would have been a little bit different. And I think in a best of 5, it's key to secure that 2-0 lead and then play with no pressure.
Yeah, I agree. You obviously want to go up when you can and put the pressure on your opponent. That P.E.K.K.A would have matched up pretty well against this no-win condition deck. You know, the biggest cards in this deck are what we're already seeing on the board, and you also have Cannon Cart in there, I believe, which, again, Mama P.E.K.K.A does very well against all said cards. E-Barbs, Mama P.E.K.K.A takes out, of course, the Bandit, the Royal Ghost, all of it. So we'll see here how Denbeer fares with this Wall Breakers control deck, which is very defensive.
And he's gonna struggle a lot actually when you see the spells. If I'm not mistaken, we have a rocket up from Denbeer, so you can't build a massive pusher. He's just gonna rocket everything. You can't do that you know, the E-Barbs with the Ghost and the Bandit all on one side and try to really take control and over pressure, because one rocket takes care of everything.
Right, so you have to split up your pushes, which then becomes very difficult because you look at all the cards in response from Denbeer. Again, it cycles very quickly. That Tesla does a lot of damage. The NATO is always there. The Ice Wizard slows everything down. So building these big pushes at the bridge are very tough.
Yeah, it's tough, and he's playing it very well as well. Look at that. The Ice Wizard placements have been very nice. He even kited with wall breakers that ended up connecting eventually. So Denbeer really coming out today and playing at a phenomenal level.
Yeah, and one of the biggest things that you had pointed out, Eric, in the competition is just that those Ice Wizard placement is so pivotal. If that guy is in your deck, it can really just swing the entire game on that 3 elixir card based off of where you place it. Does it get enough utility out? Does it get enough of that defensive slow in? And if it does, then it can really just give you almost 4 or 5 more elixir of an advantage.
That Ice Wiz NATO combination is the best defensive combination this game has ever seen since the beginning of it. This isn't cards that came out later in the game. They have been here since the very beginning, and there's a reason why it never came out of the meta, right? We've never stopped seeing that Ice Wiz NATO.
And it is still kind of high skill cap. I think a lot of people kind of get very frustrated because Ice Wiz, NATO, Baby Dragon, and originally Tombstone were just so powerful. It felt like anyone could rock them. But honestly, Ice Wizard placement, we've seen a lot of mistakes with it in this competition. And getting those NATOs down correctly when you speak about density, which is something that you love in this game, Eric, it's a lot harder to pull off than pros make it look.
Yeah, that switch to the NATO that happened about 6 or 7 months ago, it could have been a little bit more. I ever since you know, the pandemic hit, I don't even know what time it is.
What is time?
Yeah, everything's just weird. But when they switched that NATO, it became a lot tougher. Back in the day, you can basically just NATO anything very easily. Now there's cards that can't be NATO'd. The placements have to be a lot more precise, and we've seen that over the past days. A lot of missed NATOs, a lot of missed placements, like you said, from Ice Wizards. So yeah, it does take skill, especially the fact that the Ice Wizard has no DPS really.
Right. And that was a really nice defensive sequence there from Denbeer. He does get the miner back in for chip damage. Blairon may be getting a little bit frustrated, but he almost broke through on that last push. He almost did. There was a great wall breakers kite and a really nice defensive miner out from Denbeer. But either of those misses, and he would have gotten a good amount of tower damage in. So 1 minute remains. Blairon has to stay aggressive. That has Rocket written all over it. Instead, he goes for a high Valkyrie Ice Wizard low.
He used the rocket on the cannon cart with the magic archer push, and as soon as I saw it, I was about to say now he needs to be very careful. That was a terrible rocket because it puts you in a bad position. You need those rockets always to go to the elite barbarians. That's going to be the toughest to defend, and even with that, he still was able to defend and not be in a terrible position. He needs to not take any more magic archer damage though, because he needs an offensive rocket to win, and now he forced it out on defense. He misses the cannon cart with that NATO that we spoke about. The NATO is not the same as it used to be. You need to be a lot more precise.
Yeah, really, really good stuff there defensively from Denbeer, and he does miss a little bit of a pull, but is able to clean it up. Rocket going to come in here on top of these two units, and the tower 1322 to 1505, and Blairon drops that magic archer up high, trying to pick something off, and you can see he is so frustrated. It felt like he might steal that game, but Denbeer was able to hold on with some phenomenal defense.
Yeah, and that one rocket almost cost him the game, and we've seen it happen over and over and over again. And it happens to me, it happens to you, it happens to everyone watching. When you toss that big spell out and it's a 6 elixir spell a little too early, you can really create problems for yourself. He was able to defend. He needed to overspend a lot. We saw 2 fully cycled miners in his own side. We saw the Val come up, and he took a lot of damage, and that rocket at the end definitely gave him the lead, but it got tricky. It got trickier than it had to be.
And that's what the best players in the world are going to do, right? If you cycle that spell out, they have to punish you. So very, very good recognition there by Blairon for going in heavy on the right-hand side. Once that rocket was out of cycle, you saw that he almost did break through. I think the issue might have been, and maybe this wasn't his fault, but it might have been the magic archer placement. I think 2 magic archers were too close to the bridge, and that was able to get a high Valkyrie from Denbeer to take them both off the board. One of them did get a good amount of chip damage in. I just think maybe the second one down, if it was placed more towards the center of the map, could have helped clean up some of the defense, but I'm not 100% sure on that. What it really was that Blairon was able to bait that rocket out and then punish him for it. He just needed to do it one more time throughout that 5 minutes.
Yeah, and I thought it was going to be a possibility when he missed the cannon cart with that second rocket that came out, but it was just a very tough matchup. And like you said, it might have been that tiny detail of the magic archer, but at the same time, I'm putting myself in Blairon's head, and he's just trying to get any damage because he knows it's not going to come again.
Yeah, and you have to, right? That's a really, really good point you make there, Eric, is with that deck that he's playing up against, it's so defensive that if you can get any damage in at all, then you got to take it where you can get it. And obviously with the deck that Blairon was running too, there wasn't a lot of great ways just to get strict tower damage. So here we go, game number 3, and it's been all red here in the second set for Group B. Blairon and Denbeer meeting up for the very first time. It's been all Denbeer so far.
It has, and look, at least if you're Blairon, you know what you're going up against for the next 3 times if you make it to the next 3 times. But we already spoke about how good of a matchup generally this has against Blairon's deck. This might be the only deck he can actually get a win with, but there's no use for a Mega Knight here because it's always going to get P.E.K.Ka'd, and the P.E.K.Ka's always going to be healthy when it comes out of that interaction as well.
Yeah, then you have the Fisherman here to help get those King Tower activations in. Hasn't been able to break through by much yet is Blairon, but still decent damage in early.
Yeah, you can't be too unhappy with it. Any chip is good chip. The only problem is that you still have to defend the push. He hasn't actually gone on offense yet, Denbeer. And with this double elixir coming through pretty soon, you don't have any easy DPS to get rid of a P.E.K.K.A. And when he does P.E.K.K.A. in front and then toss in a graveyard, it's going to be very hard to defend.
So Denbeer cycles that Hunter in the back, Flying Machine to meet. Now we see the P.E.K.K.A. come out from Denbeer. How is Blairon going to respond?
He has to Mega Knight on top of this. It's really the only way that he can respond. But even then, he loses. Wow. He still loses the Mega Knight and takes some damage, and now he wasn't able to get that quick enough, which would have made a big difference if he was able to tank for that Hunter. He got a little bit it was good idea, just not right timing.
Yeah, he was just a second behind. It would have been really great to get that barb down in front of the Hunter, create just a little bit more pressure, and those Royal Piggies would have had even less threat on the other side of the board. Fireball going to come out, hit the King Tower because it's already activated. E-Barb split, Mama P.E.K.K.A up high, and Mama P.E.K.K.A, you know, we talked about it a lot a couple days ago. We really haven't seen her, though, in the competition until today, but she is definitely a card that it feels like is going to be more and more popular in this meta.
You just, with the cards being used, there's no reason for P.E.K.K.A not to come out, and it doesn't even have to be traditional decks. I've seen these very weird non-traditional decks where P.E.K.K.A is not the only tank. I've seen it in an RG, I've seen RG P.E.K.K.A, I've seen Mega Knight P.E.K.K.A, I've seen so many weird things come out just because of the state of the meta, right? You have these elite barbarians all over the place that get countered so well, and yeah, I think the creative minds might actually have something to play with here.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it's actually a really cool thing that we've seen. That's going to be some good damage on the left-hand side from that Electro Wizard plus the Goblin Brawler. But, you know, that Mama P.E.K.K.A, when she comes in, we've seen how the E-Barbs have basically shown their head in every single deck and every single archetype. Now what's happening is you can take those E-Barbs and replace them with the P.E.K.K.A for one more elixir cost, because if you run into E-Barbs in a matchup, that one elixir cost extra becomes a massive swing in your favor, because that P.E.K.K.A is going to take so little damage and the E-Barbs are going to be off the board.
They sure are, and it's great that you point that out, because I'm gonna expect a lot of new transitional decks when we get to the later end of this competition. We know we have a couple weeks difference between now and then, so there's gonna be a lot of shift, and I'm expecting to see those adjustments from the players that are gonna end up winning.
So here we go, Denbeer, P.E.K.K.A and Brawler working down the right-hand lane to meet that Mega Knight and, of course, the Flying Machine. Mother Witch up high for some good poison value.
Yeah, good poison value, and that Mega Knight coming down over and over again is just really causing him a lot of trouble, because the P.E.K.K.A, look how easily it takes care of it, and even the elite barbarians haven't even been able to get near the tower. Good defense here again. That P.E.K.K.A can tank for days onto Flying Machines and Zappies because the DPS is so low.
And look at that. You usually don't want to drop an Electro Wizard right into the thick of things, but a really, really nice use of the E-Wiz plus the poison to clean all that up off the board. Mother Witch going to spawn here on top of this graveyard, sending a lot of piggies the opposite direction, but that is not going to be enough. 3 up, 3 down. Denbeer makes it look easy here for Group B, and Blairon, man, what a tough matchup there in the final game, but just really, really nice stuff in games 1 and 2 from Denbeer.
Yeah, he had good matchups and he knew how to play them as well. That's a big factor in them. I want to give really a thumbs up to Denbeer on his play style today. He definitely stepped it up from the last time we saw him. I didn't really see any mistakes other than that one rocket. But look, if you have one mistake in 3 matches, you're good.
And he was able to recover, right? He was still able to defend well on the other side. You know, even that second missed rocket that he had on the cannon cart, he still cleaned up, I think, 10 elixir with it, because I think it hit E-Barbs and an E-Wiz. Just not hitting the cannon cart as well would have been a really, really nice cherry on top for him. But honestly, really great stuff. I really like what we saw out of him. He gets to reset his decks. When we come back to international finals, he's going to be joining SoCal in Group B's kind of winners bracket and winners column. And you can see right here, Blairon from Albania just really, really struggling. No buildings there, no building elixir out. I don't know if it was just the deck selection or maybe just the way that he ran his decks out today, but he found himself in a really tough spot here in game 3.
Yeah, as soon as we saw it, we knew 2 decks matched up very well. And on top of that, when your opponent's not making mistakes, it's just hard to get in the game. There's a lot of, in Clash Royale, when you do have bad matchups, it's also important for your opponent to kind of slip up a little, and then you could take advantage. But Denbeer never really did, so there's not much you can do. It's not that Blairon played terribly at any point. We saw good play out of him. We saw him pressure when he had to, but it just wasn't in his favor at any time, at any moment in the match.
And that game right there, game number 2, that was the one he was down by just under 200 HP for him to really turn the set around. And then he runs into this deck. He knows exactly what he's got. He knows it's a very, very tough matchup. And yeah, here we go. Blairon is going to be eliminated from the competition. Denbeer moves on through to join SoCal. And of course, our winners from Group A, Lucas GSM and Blaz. Up next. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I was just imagining in my head, because you said he was only down by 100 or 200, and it's that Clash Royale moment where you're like, okay, I got a chance, and then you realize it's triple elixir and they have rocket cycle and you really have no shot.
Yeah, that rocket cycle in triple is absolutely devastating, especially with that deck. It cycles so quickly and it's so defensive that no matter what you send in, you just cannot break through. So Denbeer, a quick 3-0 over Nagy Bader, and then a 3-0 over Blairon here in the elimination bracket. And we're halfway through our day.
We're halfway there, and now we have two players that are favorites in this. This wasn't like that Denbeer Blairon where we didn't know exactly what to expect. This is more of that first match, like we originally thought Matea was gonna move on, and he definitely started like he was. And now it's Dimas's turn and Predator to really show, I have the experience, I am the player to beat, and play with that confidence. And look, if you know you're gonna have a terrible matchup, I think you don't make the same mistake Mateja did and save it for last. Try to get it out of the way early, get those, use the nerves from your opponent to your advantage, and see if you can get a mistake pulled out.
That's right. Look for, maybe search for matchups just a little bit harder, or put yourself in the position so that you end up with a better matchup down the road and maybe a worse matchup to start, so you can feel out your opponent and put them on their 3 decks. So here we go. Gas and Dimas. You see that Dimas 3-0'd Tsukuyomi and came into this deciding set after Dimas had a good start, but then fell, of course, to Burkhan, who was a very, very strong player here in Group C. These are the decks. Eric, talk me through it.
Well, we know that the comfort deck for Dimas is always a Mega Knight deck, specifically that top deck, which is, funny enough, the deck that lost him the matches, right? This is the reason that he's not in first place, and it's his comfort deck. So he's been playing this for over a year now, and I really want to see, I didn't get to see enough. The match started very quickly, so if we can get that at any other point, I'd be able to, really go through the matches a little bit more.
So let's see what we have here early on. Bar barrels out from both sides. Dimas at the bottom of your screen, Gas at the top. This is Group C's elimination day. One of these guys will move forward and keep battling it out for the lion's share of $30,000. The other one will go home.
Yeah, and Mega Knight, he's gonna have to play very well against it. Gas, you know what you're up against. And Dimas, if you have this, well, this is the first Mega Knight deck that he won with both times he used it, so I'm not really worried about this one. I'm more worried about the other one. He really struggled with it. But look, man, if you've made so many great plays throughout your career, including CRL of this year with that comfort deck, there's no reason why you can't do it again here. So I think you erase your memory from the original bracket and reset and come in with all the confidence.
Gas gets one brawler punch in on that left-hand tower, along with a King Tower activation. So good start defensively for Gas, even though he is down just a bit in damage.
He's down, but like you said, King Tower activation will help eventually, especially with all those Hoggies spawning left and right. You get I think 1 or 2 less hits as long as that King Tower is activated. So it is a big factor in this type of matchup, but he did take a lot of damage on the left.
Yeah, and he's going to have to mitigate that damage moving forward. There's a nice fireball to get some more chip in. Zappy going to take that Ice Wizard off the board. And right now, Dimas very, very happy to just chip away, as he recognizes this game is going to be a little bit harder to hang on to as he gets into double and triple elixir. And of course, those piggies are going to have a hard time breaking through all that defense that Gas has. Literally every single card on the board so far from him works well against those piggies.
And just a slight mess up there. I'm pretty sure you and I both saw it. As soon as that bar barrel came in, it was clear that it was late. I'm not really sure why he didn't decide to drop something else and make sure that he wasn't going to take all that damage. And now the match is pretty much even. If anything, it's moving into Gas's favor because he has that King Tower activation. And overall, I think a lot better defense when you look at that Tornado and the Dark Prince, Baby Dragon, everything for the Hoggies.
The spell usage from Dimas has been very, very interesting. It's been mainly only used on cages and on that Princess Tower, or on units passing by the Princess Tower. And it's been fine so far. He's got good chip damage in. He's not down in elixir, but here comes his very first defense. How is he going to play it? Zappy's probably going to come down in the center of the map here, which is why you see that Baby Dragon up high. Baby Dragon gets on the Zappies instead of the Mega Knight, and that's very, very unfortunate there for Dimas.
It is unfortunate, but lucky for him, he was able to defend this push. But we've seen so many people defend 1E giant push, 2E giant push, and that 3rd giant push is the one that gets you. So you still have a lot of work to do because it only takes one time where it gets on your tower for you to lose the whole game.
And the battle has now shifted to only taking place on the left-hand side of the board, which is very, very good here for Gas. Demas going to continue to go into this left-hand lane, try to take out this Goblin Cage and get on tower with those Royal Hogs.
And yeah, chip is very, very good for him. But like I said, you still need to defend very well. It takes what? Half a second for the E-Giant to do what, 500 600 damage. As soon as that thing gets on your tower, it's like it has 7 different attacks, but out of nowhere your tower is just gone.
So here we go. E-Giant gonna NATO everything in. Barbarrel gonna come in, get that Mother Witch off the board. That was very, very nice there. Maybe a lightning comes in on the tower. Flying Machine and 1 Zappy. Yes, it does. E-Giant is gonna get 1 Zap on tower. No, it does not. The slow from the Zappy is doing just enough for Demas.
He's holding on, but look at even then where it didn't actually get to tower, he almost leveled up the game evenly again, and that Mega Knight is on tower and he is forced out a NATO, which is so important, not just because of the elixir. It's not even the whole elixir thing. It's that now he can't NATO everything onto the E-Giant, which if you look at this defense would have been perfect for him. That Zappies, that Flying Machine would have all gone down.
And you see right there the well played coming out from Gas. A low cycled Dark Prince is the reason why we saw this game just radically shift into Demas's favor. The Mega Knight leaps, same Dark Prince position drop, but no Mega Knight on the board this time. Dark Prince in to help clean up everything on the board. E-Giant up high to help take out all that defense. Gas calling a good game as he knows that E-Giant is way too slow to get any damage in on tower. And just like that, man, a low or high cycle, depending on which way you look at it, Dark Prince makes it so a Mega Knight connects on tower.
That's why I love this game. It's so important to not make any slight mistake. That was a half a tile mistake. If he placed that 1/2 tile later or further back, the Prince won't actually draw the targeting from the Mega Knight. And it's all about those micro interactions. And look, that's like I said already, I love Clash because of that. You need to be precise for all 5 minutes of this game. You cannot mess up at any point.
And I think it's important to be okay with leaking just 1 or 2 elixir, especially late game. I mean, you'll see the best in the world leak 1 or 2 elixir in single if it means putting the exact correct card down and they have no other options cycle-wise. So maybe in that moment would have been better for Gas to just hold on for a half second longer, leak 1 more elixir, Mega Knight leaps then to the Goblin Cage, then the Brawler pops, and then the Dark Prince gets the charge, and then you have a really, really nice counter push. You could drop the E-Giant in front, which we all know. E-Giant in front with Dark Prince behind, Lightning on the front end. That is a brutal push to stop, and it all fell apart because of that 1 Dark Prince.
Yeah, and he had NATO in hand because he used it as well. So hey, it happened that if you're Gas, you kind of just have to roll with it. It's a mistake. We've seen it happen. It's happened to everyone. But at this point, look, Demas got away with one there. I think if that was the perfect defense, he would have ended up losing the game. So if you're Demas, you're feeling great, but you still have to win with that one deck that he's deciding not to use yet, his comfort deck, that he only had 25% win rate. And I'm pretty sure last time we saw him come up, he went up 2-0 and then lost because of that deck.
So we'll see here, Gas going right back to the E-Giant. Mortar going to get 1 shot there on the tower. Going to get taken off the board now. Royal Delivery going to come in and clean all that up. Nice NATO to help take off the Musketeer from the board, and that E-Giant will get in about, I don't know, 3,000 damage.
Yeah. Yeah, look at that. Even with the log and pushing it back, it was still 500 damage on the board. It's crazy. Once that locks on, you just got to hope and pray it dies quickly.
And you see the frustrated eye roll there from Demas, recognizing that he's already in a bad spot to start this game. He's down to elixir. I would have liked to see Gas maybe set something up in the back instead of sending out that Barbarrel. That right there, that +1 trade there for Demas evens things up, allows him to switch lanes, and now we'll see what Gas wants to do.
I do like the Mortar offensive just to force things out and not allow a full E-Giant push to come in. It basically took off that Ice Wizard, made it invaluable for him at all, and it forced out a NATO as well to try and get some damage out, but even then doesn't get anything from it. And overall, this was a very, very good interaction for Demas, and it puts him back into this game.
Yeah, really nice play there by Demas. Gets another Mortar connection in. Miner is on the tower. Gas is out of sorts when you talk about his rotation. Ice Wizard working down the wrong lane here and out of cycle again. So maybe now we see him set up in the back. No, he decides to go Goblin Cage up high. Maybe when he ticks to 10, we'll see that E-Giant drop.
It might come down to at the end just because he doesn't want to force anything. He doesn't want to put himself in a bad position, and I don't mind it. You know that you can win it with one good push, so I think he's playing it smart. He went in the back in the lane that the mortar would have been most detrimental to him, and yeah, you're getting a lot. That's a lot of damage on the left. It was more than I thought he was actually going to take, but he still needs to defend this. And I don't love the fact that he used the Dark Prince on the left, because like you said earlier, the best push in the game when you have E-Giant is when the Dark Prince is behind it.
And now you see that E-Giant connecting on the right-hand side, getting that tower to about the same as its sister tower, 1898 to 1904. Meanwhile, Demas just going to continue to chip away with his minor damage. Baby Dragon going to come down in response, and Demas doing a very, very good job of picking and choosing when to get that mortar on the board to create just enough discomfort for his opponent.
I'm trying to figure out how he wins this game at this point, because if he just goes defensive mortar, not only is it going to take off the shield from the Dark Prince eventually when it moves on and then give him a good Valk or a good delivery, but every push takes so long, and I really like that minor chip that he's going to get from there, because it's going to force something out or it's going to force him to take a lot of damage. Good Valk. Hello, my friend. You need to log. You need to do something, and he does nothing.
Just like that. The E-Giant on tower. That's going to be
GG.
basically tower down. 203 remaining, just waiting on the lightning. And you said it perfectly. And I don't even know if it was in this game. I think it was actually in last game, where you were like, that E-Giant can literally steal your tower in one push. Nice King Tower activation there with the NATO. Poison does come in, and just waiting on that lightning is Gas. And there it goes. Demas struggling in game number 2 against one of the most powerful decks in the entire game. Where did things go wrong for Demas?
It was the wrong choice of defense. He needed to delivery onto the Ice Wizard with the Dark Prince, not Valkyrie, because there was no shield on that Dark Prince, and the Ice Wizard had already taken a lot of damage. You delivery on that, and then you Valk directly onto that E-Giant, but instead he decided to delivery. It takes a lot longer to come down and a lot less DPS as well, and he took way too much damage. And if you don't want to go that route, I thought he was going to log and possibly put in a mortar in front of that tower before the E-Giant got there, sacrifice a mortar, but not your tower. And a little bit unfortunate on the defense. It was very tough. Obviously the lightning didn't help at all, but Gas played it well. He played very patient, so I'm okay with the loss from Demas, and congrats to Gas for getting that one win on the board.
Yeah, we're all even up here going into game number 3. Gonna see a new deck here from Gas, the same most likely from Demas. Demas getting very close with that minor chip deck, but that's the trouble with those control and those minor chip decks, is you miss one defense and they can make up all that ground that took you 4 minutes of chip.
Yeah, it's so unfortunate how you can play almost a perfect game for that long and then lose, but it happened to Gas on the first game of this match. He played very well, messed up one Dark Prince and lost. So now both players have kind of suffered the same fate, you want to say that. And this is a very nice delivery, but that bomber doing a lot of damage, and overall very good defense. Looking at it, that Prince should never get on tower just because of the defenses that Demas has.
Yeah, he's got a log, he's got skeletons, he's got the delivery, all of those great responses. And when they work in conjunction with one another, as you said, there should be zero opportunities for that Prince to get on tower.
And this is what he did last game, right? It's a completely different match, but overall he did the same thing. He plays every time he saw an Ice Wizard, he would play that mortar up high, force a cage, and get him out of cycle. And I don't mind it at all, because look what it's forced out of Gas. It forced not only a lot of defense, but an E-Giant that he probably didn't want to play this early on.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if he did. I don't love that Valkyrie being played right up high into that bomber, maybe just a little lower, but you understand wanting to get that damage in as soon as possible on those E-Giants. Demas saw how quickly those games can turn, and honestly, that high Valkyrie was very necessary because he had to drop a delivery on top, and he still barely escaped with 0 damage.
Yeah, at that point, I'm not sure I love the delivery because of the Prince being available. You kind of always want to have it in rotation. And I'm not sure it would have got on tower. And if he did, it would have been maximum 100 or 200 damage from that initial zap of the E-Giant. So you just need to be careful not to outcycle yourself. Make sure you always have something for this Prince. Now he has to go Skellies, but there's a bomber on the board. And it could get tricky here.
So now Skelly's low. He's saving that delivery to get on top of the Bomber. Bomber does go down, but Prince is still alive. Now tanking for the E-Giant. And that Brawler gets some damage in on the right-hand side. Mortar comes up high, but a Lightning is there to respond. Now no Lightning for that Musketeer, but that NATO pulling it in. Going to take the Muskie off the board and get some good damage in on that left-hand tower.
It's crazy how much. Look at that. It had almost no health, and that tower is down to 1691. And I think it all stems from that delivery, right? He didn't have anything for the Prince. The Prince forced out so much defense out of him, and it was all downhill. It was that snowball effect that we've spoken about so much.
Nice high skeletons there to turn the Prince around. Valkyrie get on top to get some damage in. Now Poison comes in on the right-hand side to help whittle down this Electro Giant plus Goblin Brawler push. Brawler will die with the Valkyrie and the Poison, and this should be a pretty easy defense. You got to be very careful to not give too much lightning value. Maybe he goes high here with the Valkyrie. Yes, he does.
This is what I don't love, right? Why the delivery? Why he's not. We've seen it so many times when you don't get all the value needed out of a delivery. It has cost so many people the game. There was nothing really for that delivery to do other than get a little bit of damage onto the dragon that was already being tanked for by the Valk. So he needs to be careful, man. That could end up costing you the game.
Minor chip damage in. Log going to come in as well. Skeletons there to catch that Prince charge. E-Giant working down the lane with about 75% health and a high Musketeer here. Is that lightning range of all three? It is. He takes out the Valkyrie as well, I believe, up high, and that E-Giant does not make it through, but the baby dragon does.
Yeah, and now that the delivery was needed, it came down a second too late, and that is a lot of chip, and that is very important when you look at the spells. The spell is a poison, and on the other end, you have that lightning. So if he can even it up and keep it even very late in this game, he wins it basically on spell damage.
Yeah, and so here we go. Push coming in. Great lightning there. Hits the Musketeer and the Mortar, of course. Miner sent into the safe spot. Picked up by the Ice Wizard Bomber there to help clean up as well. 0 damage in here from Demas. Demas needs to get a poison out and another Miner down to protect himself from the lightning damage over the next 20 seconds.
And I really like the way Gas is playing this at the end. He caught 2 straight Miners. I like the poison, and he catches the... No, Gas has been playing very, very good at the end of this game, and it shows in the scoreboard.
But he's gonna lose. He's gonna lose. Where's the lightning? Second lightning in. There it is, just in time. Yeah. And Gas knows that he played a very, very clean game number 3. 103 HP remaining, never getting ahead of himself, pre-cycling in the back to catch those Miners and staying very aggressive at the bridge. Man, that was some good stuff.
You wish you can get that baby dragon back if you're Demas, because that was 300-400 damage and so many deliveries that I said don't use, and the one that you needed to use came down a little bit late. It's so unfortunate, but at least the E-Giants are out of the way. I think he only had 2 E-Giant decks. It's not 3, right? Or am I mistaken?
I think it is just 2. I'm not 100% sure. Maybe that we can get the Dex graphic back on screen if production can do that. Although Demas and Gas have been ready to go, so the games have been coming very, very quickly. So whatever works for you guys works for us. But I have seen some really nice... You guys are the best. Thank you so much. So here we go. Bottom left is what we're going to be expecting here in this game. Talk to me a little bit about these matchups.
I think he's okay. He can actually win these matchups. He can actually come back in the game. I would like to see him first win with that Mega Knight deck and then come back to the Mortar. It'll suffer a little bit more with those recruits always being able to pick up the Miners as well as the Elite Barbarians. So I would like to see him come with the Mega Knight version first, and that's exactly what we're going to see.
So here we go. Log in with the Heal Spirit. Going to clean all that up from Gas. That's 5 elixir spent on 4 elixir out. Miner going to come into the back of the tower here, get some chip in. E-Barb's going to come back in response here for Gas.
And I hope... Look, I'm not on Dimas's side here. I don't want him to win, but I love game fives, especially in the elimination games. So I'm rooting for Dimas here just so we can get that nail biter at the end, that one game that always, you know, brings that extra excitement, adrenaline, and reactions out of the players. We saw a very nice celebration out of Gas in the previous one. So, I mean, a game 5 win would only be even better.
Yeah, I mean, and he earned it. Honestly, it feels like we are seeing a bit of a different Gas today than we saw in the first day of competition. Maybe just a little more confident, maybe a little more comfortable in his own skin. Maybe he's got a lot more practice in with those decks, but it's been really, really nice to see the improvement from day 1 to today from Gas. Not that he played poorly on day 1, but he's done some really, really nice stuff. That Bandit going to cruise on through those Spear Goblins. It will get on tower for 1 hit.
It will, and like you said, Gas just feels so much more comfortable with his decks. I saw him, those little defenses that we're seeing today with the Heal Spirits and the Spear Goblins, we did not see that in day 1 of this group. And it shows that he's maybe not only been practicing a lot, but been practicing these matchups specifically.
And look at that. Gets a couple hits there from the E-Barbs on tower. Mega Knight does come down, but 7+ elixir in hand to respond here is Gas, and maybe we just see some royal deliveries dropped on either side of this. Nice use of the wall breakers there.
Yeah, nice use, but great defense again out of him. And like you said, 7 elixir down, but only 4 crossing the bridge because half that health was already gone.
Nice flying machine to get on top of that Bandit. Spear Goblins behind, and Gas putting together some really, really nice offensive pushes here that's making his opponent work. I really don't like that Mother Witch, and neither does Gas.
Yeah, I think he had an idea in his head of, okay, I'm gonna get some Hoggies down, and then realized it's only a Musketeer and it's not really gonna do much because it's 1 HP. And although it wasn't great, it doesn't really affect much in the game. I really like that Heal Spirit that he had ready. And on the left, he needs to be careful. He thought that Bandit was gonna go left, and it ended up going right.
That's a really, really nice Heal Spirit out from Gas. Bandit dashes to the right-hand side. E-Barb connects on the left. And now a Fireball down on the right-hand side in a perfectly timed log. Great recognition of the health of the miner there to drop that log low after the miner was low enough. Gets all that knocked back, cleaned up off the board. Beautiful, beautiful trade.
I got a little bit nervous for him just because they got so close to the tower, those wall breakers, and that would have been a lot of damage. But like you said, he timed it perfectly, and it's something that I've talked about before, getting the most out of those last minute interactions at 1 HP really being calculated, and he's being more than calculated here.
So here we go, push crossing the bridge. Royal recruits on both sides. Pretty clean there from Dimas, but you can see this Mother Witch plus that Piggy on the right-hand side doing some good damage. But now we have a Mega Knight doesn't leap. Wow.
That was so many things could have happened in that interaction that the way it actually went down wasn't all that bad for Gas. I thought he was going to take so much more damage than he did. I thought it was going to be game over, and he's still alive, but you see that Dimas really knows how to play this deck. Although it seemed like he had no control, just one good push gave him the match back.
Yeah, that was a really, really nice push. It was put together perfectly, and now we see that high Mega Knight again. Bandit down low. Bandit going to tank for that flying machine. Mega Knight now taking that responsibility over as the Bandit falls off the board. High Musketeer on top of the flying machine. Miner in with wall breakers. Spell does come down. Zaps and logs both sides. 1300 to 1030, and a high Mega Knight again to keep this Musketeer on the board. Nice play there from Dimas.
And we have to remember, no big spell out of Dimas here, so he needs to get some chip without a doubt. And those wall breakers are going to come in.
Yeah, beautiful zap there. Mega Knight turns and leaps, and just like that, we are going to game 5 once again today, and Gas is going to give us quite the performance on camera, I could presume, Eric.
Yeah, that's why I want that game 5. If he's showing that emotion in game 3 and 4, I want to see the game 5. Hopefully we get big reactions out of both players, because right now it's only out of Gas. Dimas has been very, very controlled emotionally throughout it. Even when he wins, we don't see much emotion. He's gone Morden style on us.
Yeah, he really has, and I think it's maybe because he's running into a bit more adversity than he thought in this set. I don't think he expected to roll through. I mean, they had met each other before in GSL, but as we're saying, Gas seems like a different beast today. He did drop that last game, but he played it very, very well, and that was Dimas's comfort deck, right? Like, that is his go-to deck. So you losing to your opponent's comfort deck with a medium matchup, that's not a bad place to be in. So here we go, game number 5 Who's going to take it here from Group C? Will it be Demus or will it be Gas? The first time these guys faced, Gas took the set.
And we see a mortar, that mortar deck that Demus is running is 0-2 today. So it's not worked out very well for him. We know that Gas has a lot of things he could catch miners with, especially those recruits if he plays them like that. And right now, Mortar coming out early, which we've seen a lot out of Demus, and it's not a bad play at all. It's not going to be the reason he wins this game. The reason he wins this game is if he can get enough chip damage over time.
Yep, he's got to get that chip damage in. He's got to be able to maintain this dual lane defense, because that's really what it was all about before when he lost with that, you know, to that Electro Giant deck, or to both of those Electro Giants deck, is that defense late game was really tough for him to keep up with.
At least looking at the deck now, he doesn't have to worry about a late game, right? Like you just said, he struggled a lot late game, but looking at this matchup, it's not going to be that. So if he can really work this game the same way he did the other ones, where he got a lot of good chip, a lot of good force defenses with these mortars, he should be okay. But that flying machine is going to be a pain for him as well.
I was just going to say, I think that flying machine is going to be such a nuisance. We'll probably see a high delivery on top. Yes, we do, but the flying machine still connects on tower, and that is one of the hardest things about that card. And again, I'll talk a lot about how I think the developers over at Supercell are doing such a brilliant job. And the Royal Delivery is another one of those cards that I absolutely love. It's so strong, but it's so hard to time.
I think that is one of those cards that got the perfect balance change. It made it to where if you're very, very calculated and you're very good with it, you can get a lot of value, but if you're not, it's not going to work at all. Originally, it was way overpowered, right? With that knockback effect and how big the radius was and the damage that it dealt. But the balance that they figured out for it just makes it the perfect card, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that you can catch miners with it, the fact that you can mitigate Goblin Barrels 100%, that you have to be so ready to go. Flying Machine going to connect on the right-hand side if those skeletons... One shot, I believe, did come in.
Yeah.
Mortar back down, and that mortar will not connect because those Spear Goblins have to come up high. E-Barbs dropped just a little bit too low in the pocket. Now we'll get a Musketeer plus maybe a Valkyrie. No, just Muskie here defensively. Actually, the better call there instead of overspending.
He needs to be careful though, because he's giving up a lot of that flying machine damage unnecessarily. He needs to time those skellies a little bit better, which he misses again. And that's the third time that he is forced into a bad position because of the flying machine, and specifically because of the skelly placement.
Yeah, I mean, he's either got to do a better job with his Royal Delivery getting on top of that flying machine, or as you just said, the easiest thing, or not the easiest thing, but the best thing is to get that +3 trade with those skeletons.
Yeah, and that's a nice delivery, but he's still gonna have to deal with it. That heal spirit coming in, but just a little bit too late. Great idea, but great ideas don't always work in Clash unless the timing is perfect as well.
So here we go, log in. Flying Machine gonna get one more shot in on that right-hand side. Gas just chipping away with the Flying Machine, but as you can see, he is definitely in the deficit here as his opponent brings that left-hand tower down to 1376. Now we see a massive, massive dual lane push in.
And the good thing about dual lane for Demus here is that it's not that big of a factor, because once he pulls everything in together, he has a Valk, and that mortar does a lot of damage to its radius. So overall, the split lane pushes could be a lot more difficult in a different matchup, but in this one, with the delivery and with the Valk and the mortar, he's okay with it.
And there we go, high delivery to catch all those recruits crossing the bridge. Miner in on the backside of the tower. High Valkyrie here to tank for that Musketeer. Spear Goblins to take the Musketeer off the board, but Demus was locked and ready for it. Now we see a good counter push coming in the right-hand side. Delivery on top.
And that poison placement forced a delivery out of him, and this is where it could get tricky. He no longer has a delivery in cycle, which would be key right now for the left-hand side. Instead, it forces out not only a Valk, but Skellies as well, and that flying machine has full health. He's able to cycle back because of this triple elixir, and a little bit fortunate that we are this late into the game.
Really nice there from Demus with that Valkyrie up high, ready to go. Gas recognizes that this is going to be it for him with only 15 seconds remaining. Poison is in. Musketeer is there. Everything going to come down on top of this defensively. Fireball in on that Miner and the Muskie, and just like that, Gas is eliminated from the competition. Demus able to turn things back around after a great start and then a rough middle there.
A day of reverse sweeps. This wasn't a full reverse sweep, but he brought the
Felt like
broom
it.
out a little bit. You know, it was a half reverse sweep, maintained control of his emotions, of his mind, didn't let the tilt get to him. And another one bites the dust with being up in the set.
Yeah, I mean, Demas there really did struggle in those third and fourth games, and it was seeing something out of gas that we haven't really seen much of so far in the tournament, which was just really, really clean, high-level, patient plays. And honestly, it just felt like, you know, it was just a normal game of Clash Royale that he lost there. He didn't do anything glaringly wrong. Demas didn't do anything insanely outplay. It was just a good back and forth between the two.
It's a little bit of what we spoke about with Blair on. It's not that he played badly. It just was tough for him to actually get on tower. And there wasn't much he could do unless Demas slipped up. And Demas was not planning on slipping up at all during that game. He had control from the first second to the last second. And Gas, I can honestly say, out of the people eliminated, I think he's the one that's played the best.
Yeah, I would agree. I would definitely agree. I think when you talk about the level of his competition, the way that he played, the matchups that he played through, and his style, you know, he was very, very calm and patient today and very calculated. But Demas with those Mega Knights, man, he is just so brutal. And right there, you saw him take game 4. It was really just a Dark Prince that was placed a little too high by Gas that gave Demas that game. And then just like that, you give him an opening and he's going to take a run and run with it. And just like that, Demas is going to move on. Demas joins Burkan, Denbeer, Sokol, Blaz, and Lucas GSM in our international finals.
Here we go. It's that bracket is coming together very, very nicely. And I'm so excited because Demas is someone that I've known for a long time. We've seen him in ladder, we've seen him in CRL, we've seen him in Team Liquid Academy, and moving on here, it's another name for us to, you know, keep on following his journey through Gamestars. So the competition's tough.
You know, normally I wouldn't do this, but you did say he was in Team Liquid Academy, and you were the former head coach of Team Liquid, world champion. If you could give Demas any advice based off of what you've seen so far, what would you say to him?
One Mega Knight deck, my friend. Come in with some surprises. You're good enough. You don't need to rely on it, and they're gonna prepare. You know, later on when we've spoken to One Hive Hunter, we've spoken to Lucas and all these players. SB even said, I'm working with Julesy. They're gonna analyze you, man. You cannot come into the later stages here with 2 Mega Knight decks and survive it. I just don't think it's possible. So if you want to use one, go for it, but switch it up a little bit.
And I think that you said this earlier in the competition, and I know Juicy J and George did this at WCG. It was kind of an agreement, like, look, once I make it so far, that means there's going to be a lot of money on the line, which means you need to get paid for doing the analysis for me so that I can win. And that was something that Juicy J and George did together in China. And Juicy ended up taking that massive, I believe it was a 50K prize home. So that is something that these guys are going to have to do, especially as we get into that first week of competition in May as we start our finals. But we're not there yet. Tomorrow is another full day of elimination. And we've got one more best of 5 today between 2 guys that met before, and Johnny Maloney and Predator. The first time that they matched up, Predator was able to take the set, but no one could beat Financier in Group 2.
Yeah. No one could. And Predator is another player that really broke out in the past year, especially in the no-till where his teammate was Lapocati and the star ended up being Predator, which no one expected. He was really that guy that they went to. So can you continue that momentum? Can you use that to your advantage and really move on in this competition? Like you said, Predator did beat Johnny in the first time, but it was only a 3-2, so not that much to worry about if you're Johnny.
Yeah, and what I really, really love about that 3-2 best of 5 set is that these guys know all 3 decks that the other one's going to play. They've played in pretty much every single one of those matchups already. And it's just going to be about the evolution of their play style from then to now. And here we go. These are the decks that we saw, and these are the numbers. And it's clear that Predator, being a former teammate of Lapocati, is a big fan of the Mortar, Eric.
He sure is. That 3 Mortar deck. And he struggled a little bit because, look, there's arrows in the lava deck. There is a Sparky that he has no reset for in 2 of the decks. Yes, he has the Royal Delivery, but we know how tough it is once that Sparky goes behind the Goblin Giant with the Dark Prince and then gets raged up. That delivery is just not enough. So he needs to be very careful, and he needs to play perfectly, honestly, if he's going to win these matchups.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a mortar player. I look at these decks that Predator has, and this is, I mean, again, this was so early on in the competition that you and I hadn't quite gotten as much information as we have now. Where I really like what Johnny Maloney has in this matchup, opposed to Predator. It feels like the deck versatility is just so much more in his favor.
It's crazy to think that he was able to actually win 3-2, right? And like when I'm looking at these decks, I had forgotten exactly what the matchups were. I don't know how he won 3-2, to be honest.
So here we go. Predator at the top of the screen, Johnny Maloney at the bottom. And as Eric is just reminding you guys, Predator was the one that took this best of 5 before.
And yeah, and look, to be honest, I'm liking the Predator look here. It looks like in between games he's going to be dealing with some meetings. I like the formal look out of him. He's all business and no play. And on the bottom we see Johnny, the complete opposite, looks nice and relaxed in his white t-shirt.
Yep, and that relaxing play gets that Mother Witch out. Hoggy's on the board, and these guys are feeling like they're probably living in a bit of deja vu, as they have seen this matchup before, I believe.
Johnny can see it 3 times because he's going to play the same mortar deck with different spells over and over again.
Yeah, I'm really surprised that Predator decided to do that, but, he must have a lot of confidence, and again, it worked for him last time out against Johnny.
Yeah, it definitely worked against Johnny, but it did not work against Financier. And maybe he underestimated a little bit his opponents. It's fine to feel comfortable with a deck, but 3 times the same deck, and it being a mortar deck, which doesn't really match up that well against the current meta, could be a struggle for him now that I'm sure Johnny prepared very well, and I'd hope he at least practiced against it a bunch.
Yeah, and I also think that the other thing that we have to consider is that if Predator does make it past this set, he has to reset this when we go into international finals. He cannot come out with 3 mortar decks. I feel like he will get punished for it. But as of right now, he does have a slight lead with that minor chip damage in. Another Fisherman comes down for Johnny, as he's running most likely that Royal Giant deck. There it is.
There it is, an RG in the back, and this is where it starts getting fun for the RG player, because he's going to end up cycling into another one before the second mortar comes in, unless Predator can cycle quickly to another mortar. And I really like the way he's playing this defense. He's not waiting for things to come down. Good fireball out of him, and he should have another mortar if he wants to use it here if an RG comes down, which I don't expect it to, just because Johnny also knows. If I know that he has a mortar, Johnny also knows.
And he does send the RG in anyway. Mother Witch in front, and that's a really, really bad play. Mother Witch gets taken off the board. No piggies populate the map with those spear goblins. RG comes in, and that mortar does defend adequately. Fireball in on that Mother Witch once again. So far, the Mother Witch play from Johnny Maloney has been looking for the game instead of letting the game come to her.
Yeah, you don't need to force it, especially in there where the mortar was already up. So even if you do spawn a couple of those piggies, they're not really going to do much. You're going to go towards the mortar. They have less health than the original Hoggies do have. And like you said, it seems like he's trying to get it down at any point. And that fireball hits nothing at all.
And that was right after he sent in a snowball, so he knew that Mother Witch was going to be pushed back, and that has to be GG. Kill Spirit comes in perfectly. Mother Witch resets. Mother Witch still on the board. Evarb's on the Mother Witch before the Royal Giant. Royal Giant gets one more shot in. 540 remains on that top right tower, and one mistake is going to do Predator in with this RG deck. Johnny right back on offense. This time he's not making a misplay with that Mother Witch. Not going to ignore the minor, drop skeletons down just in case, which is probably the better play in case this game does continue on.
Yeah, but it won't. It's a matter of time now, and there's a log fireball, and that is game over. And it's crazy to see that mistake, right? That was such a weird mistake to see out of someone so experienced that we expect so much of. But hey, if there's something that we've seen in GSL, it is spells gone wrong.
It's a surprising use of 6 elixir, right? And totally, man. We have seen so many spells be the only reason that players have actually lost their games and lost their sets. Lightning was one of the biggest ones out there, right? It's so expensive, but it's also so effective when used correctly. And right there you saw 6 elixir spent on a Mother Witch. Very, very surprising to see the snowball and then the fireball come out like that from Predator.
Yeah, just completely miss it. That's going on to the not top 10 plays for those sports fans. And look, Predator, you actually had a pretty good hold on the game, right? And
He did.
it got away with just a complete whiff on that fireball. If you're Predator, man, it hurts, but I would say switch to another deck. He just doesn't have another deck, right? It's just more of the same one with different spells. That's the biggest issue with his deck choice. You can't mentally reset and try something else, play something a little less calculated. You know, this is what you have, and you have to win with it no matter what.
Did one of Predator's decks, it did have arrows in it, correct?
I don't think it actually does.
I was thinking of a different one. Okay, yeah, because I was like,
Maloney has it in his lava deck.
That's what it was. Yeah, because I was thinking Predator has to play something that matches up better against Lava, because if he does run into Goblin Giant Sparky, which he is going to run into, it looks like, you know, he can try to surround with Spirit Goblins. He can try to get E-Barbs down on the either side of that Sparky, but either way, I think matchup-wise, he's going to be in for a bit of a treat here with both of these decks. This one is Goblin Giant Sparky from Johnny, and the next one will be Lava Hound.
And he chose to go without the zap. He has one version that has zap, and I know it has triple spell, but I think the triple spell zap one has delivery zap fireball. It's not the one with snowball, and that zap would have been nice to have here against that Sparky.
Yeah, I mean, you think that, I mean, obviously it's easy for us, hindsight's 2020, but Johnny goes up in game one, and he had one deck, I believe, that he was 100% with, which was the Goblin Giant Sparky deck, and maybe he obviously wants to go back to his most successful deck in game two when he's up a game, because he feels confident with it. So both these guys leaking right now, which is kind of, I mean, not surprising from Johnny, but what do you think about Mortar players leaking in single against this deck?
The problem is he doesn't have anything to force out from Johnny, right? Because if you do Mortar, he's gonna just drop a Sparky onto that Mortar right away, and then he has enough time to drop a Giant in front. If you still had the Miner in play, or at least a Spear Goblins, but he used both already, that's the biggest issue. So he has nothing to really go in with.
Well, I guess then at least you can give a good recognition here for Predator for understanding the situation that he's put himself in. Johnny on the other side of it as we tick down to 1 minute. I imagine we'll see a Sparky set up in the back relatively soon. And there it is.
And this is where Predator has to play perfect defense. It's possible. I'm telling you, it's possible, because I've seen it firsthand, and you've seen it firsthand out of Lapo, out of Igor. Very few players can do it. They can defend for the full length of this match, and everything has to be one step ahead, and that's kind of what he's doing right now, and I really like it. He knew exactly what was going to happen. He knew the minions were going to come down. He had that delivery hovered over, and he needs to do that for the rest of the game. That's the difficult part, right? It's not just one or two defenses.
Yeah, and that really is the most important thing that you point out there, Eric. You have to do it over and over and over, and as it gets deeper into double and into triple elixir, those defenses become harder and harder to pull off. And Predator did it great the first time, but a lot of us can do it very well the first time. It's about doing it the fifth time.
Yeah, exactly that. It only takes one mess up to lose to a Sparky deck, especially if it has rage. It could all go downhill so quickly. And don't forget that it is also a very nice strategy from the Sparky players that we've seen in the past to go split lane, and you'll see that mini P.E.K.K.A minions on the left with rage come out once that delivery is no longer available, and it could actually work very well for him as well.
That really is one of the most powerful things about this deck, and it's kind of shocking how strong it is. But just splitting up your Sparky in one lane and setting the rest the opposite lane, that Sparky demands so much attention, and if you misplay any defense on the Sparky, then you have the opportunity to double down in the opposite lane. Really nice use of the delivery so far here from Predator.
Nice use, but now he doesn't have it for the Sparky. The Spear Goblins go down, and this should be a pretty good defense for Johnny. What I need to see out of Johnny is a little bit more pressure. That rage needs to come out earlier. It needs to force out harder defenses, because it seems like Predator is not even breaking a sweat right now.
Yeah, Predator seems to be doing just fine. Very happy with the damage coming in on both towers here, taking chips when and where he can, getting that miner in where he can. And this is it. This is the push to do it. There's the delivery up high. Dark Prince gets turned around. Musketeer takes Dark Prince off the board.
Look at that Sparky.
And Sparky gets a big shot on the right-hand side. That's exactly what you were calling earlier, Eric.
It's that split lane rage that he wasn't taking advantage of, and you saw the one time he did it how effective it was. And now look at this is all downhill. We spoke about it. You cannot, it's not defending once, it's not defending twice, it's the whole game. It only took one Sparky hit for him to take the lead in this match. And look, you need to minor fireball and not get caught by anything. That fireball has to come down or you're gonna lose, my friend. They're a little bit late. I would have liked to see it come in earlier just so that Miner can keep chipping away. And this has to be a perfect defense, and Miner needs to get cycled right now.
Miner not coming in. Goblin Giant doesn't get to tower. 1386 to 1425. 3 seconds left. Fireball is in, and somehow Predator does it. He holds on. Johnny Maloney maybe just sitting back a little bit too comfortable for one extra sequence. Maybe if there was just one exchange in there that was more offensive for him and less defensive, he would have gotten that damage in. Or maybe it was just that he needed to create more split lane pressure. It
was that E-Wiz as well.
Oh yeah,
hold it, reset the Miner. It grinds my gears. It's like a pet peeve of mine. If you have E-Wiz, just be patient and drop it directly onto that Miner. That Miner got 4 hits that it shouldn't have when you have E-Wiz. And look, Johnny, the good thing for you, my friend, is he's gonna play that deck 2 more times, and now you know, save that E-Wiz and just reset it over and over again.
Exactly. I mean, you're doing a great job right now of just recognizing there's only one way to lose this game. It's minor chip damage. There is no way, if Johnny plays this correctly, there's no way that a mortar connects offensively for more than one shot, maybe twice in the entire 5 minutes. It's all about that minor chip damage. And look, 7 miners out from Predator and 1 Electro Wizard out from Johnny. That is 100%, 10 out of 10 mitigation that he is just ignoring and letting pass by.
And he can't even fireball the E-Wiz because he needs the fireball to get damage onto the Sparky, or the Sparky will always connect. We know that the fireball, he kept on using it over and over again to get that damage to the Sparky, because if you do get into that double elixir, you can cycle 2 fireballs and fireball logs and it kills the Sparky right away. So if you are dropping the E-Wiz on the Miner, it might actually force out an unwanted fireball from Predator and put him in a bad position when it's time to defend.
So an E-Wiz right at the river is met by a defense there from Predator, which turns into a little bit of an offense, a Miner plus bats, because E-Wiz and Zap are both out of cycle. 2462 to 2486.
Yeah, and this is just going to be the same thing we saw last time, only it started earlier this time, right? So what does that mean? It means a lot more defense is needed from Predator. 2 more minutes of defenses.
Nice fireball there to clean all that up off the board, knowing that the E-Wiz was out of cycle. We get this very aggressive push in. Predator does a great job, though, of sequencing that defense for very, very little damage on tower.
And this version has bats in it as well that can get onto that Sparky. It would have helped a little bit in that split lane push. Now he needs to be hovering over that Zap every time he sees bats, because if not, he can get a lot of value as long as the Goblin Giant is being tanked for. You cannot drop the bats until that Goblin Giant locks onto either the mortar or the delivery.
Yeah, it is a very, very bad interaction when you talk about trying to drop those swarm units on top of Goblin Giant before the spear goblins on the back have latched onto whatever they're going to be attacking, because otherwise it's obviously just free elixir to your opponent. You've lost 1 more defensive card. So now we're doing what we saw in the first game, a bit of a stop and stare as we tick to 1 minute, double elixir, we start the push.
Yeah, and this is the bats. This is the bats value that I like to see. Now look, there is no way I want to see a Miner get any damage. Fireball came out. You better E-Wiz the next Miner chip that comes in. Please do that, Johnny. It's your key to victory. This should have a rage coming in on the right, and nothing. There's a... Okay, he decides not to rage it, but it still forces out the elite barbarians. I don't think he would have had enough elixir to actually deal with the mini P.E.K.K.A in time with the rage.
Yeah, and the E-Barbs do come out, but nice cleanup there with the Dark Prince on the other side of it. And of course, just enough defense on the left side there from Predator. Bat's going to get a little bit of damage in. E-Wiz goes up high, and again, that E-Wiz now out of cycle to catch miners, which Johnny has not done much of anyway.
Yeah, and I really don't like that E-Wiz, because the Sparky was already killing the miner, getting it off the board. So there was no real reason that for 5 bats you need to drop a whole E-Wiz. Take a little bit of damage and then make up for it with 1 good push, or at least secure yourself that you have defense for the next miner. This should be a nice fireball, by the way.
Minor cycle defensively there by Predator. Johnny here piling up at the bridge. No fireball has come in yet. Maybe
he decided to minor defensively instead, which I'm not really a fan of because it forced out also a delivery. I would have liked to see the minor be saved for the chip, especially when you have this much of a lead. He's already up 400. If you can secure 500 to 600 point lead with this much time left, you're pretty much good.
Yeah, get that damage on tower. You still were going to use the delivery. The delivery was going to do the exact same job on top of those minions. Plus, you see the fireball there miss the Sparky that time around. But no tank in front of the Sparky, at least at the moment. So this should be pretty easy to clean up. Delivery probably going to come on top. There it is.
There it is. And he's struggling with this Sparky deck right now. We haven't seen the rage be used once, man. And look, last game, how did he get damaged? Split lane rage, and he hasn't done it one time in the whole game.
So here we go. Miner to the back on the right-hand side to defend. Fireball in on top of that Sparky and the tower. Minions up high. There's the rage finally. Mini P.E.K.K.A raged up, goes to the tower. Look at that. Eric, you called it perfectly. Mini P.E.K.K.A gets a big shot. Left-hand side, Goblin Giant connects with the minions. That is tower down, just like that.
I mean, I got paid for a reason, you know, all these years, all these years of coaching, I learned something. Hey, I might not be able to play because my hands just don't work, but I understand the game, and all it took was one split lane rage, and he won the game.
Yep, that was a really, really nice push there from Johnny. He does exactly what you called. He sets up a Dark Prince in the back. He gets a Mini P.E.K.K.A down at the bridge. He splits minions in the middle, and a Rage comes down. We finally saw the Rage 4+ minutes into the game, but that is going to be enough to give Johnny another win here in our final set of the day from Group D. Good call there, man.
It's all about understanding your matchup. It really is. This game is something you have to become a student of the game. Literally, you need to understand. And every time you see a specific matchup, you need to know how to beat it. And I learned that from my players originally. When I started coaching, I wasn't as well versed in every matchup. And sometimes I would sit on the bench and I would be like, why isn't he doing this and that? And Baron would look at me and be like, bro, what do you say, man? Just all he has to do is do this. And I started studying and studying and studying until I was able to understand everything. And we've seen it. Once he did the one thing that I said, it was game over.
Yeah, it's really crazy. You know, people have talked a lot about comparing Clash Royale to styles of speed chess. And one of the biggest things in chess is when you're put in a specific situation, there is always the best move to get out of it, right? There's always the one move that is the absolute best option to put you in that situation. And that's really all Clash Royale is as well. It's about recognizing it, get your fingers in the right place, and playing the best response time and time again. And that is exactly what we just saw.
And that's what I tell people a lot when they ask me what is Clash Royale, and I tell them it's basically like a moving chessboard at all times. You always have to make the correct move, but the only difference is that with chess, well, with speed chess, like you said, you have a lot less time, but in chess in general, you have time to think. At this point, you don't. Clash is consistently moving over and over and over again, and it is that chess game. I love that you said it, because every move causes a reaction, and which is the best reaction is usually the player that wins.
And look at that, the late log comes
and you just gave him an extra. Wow, you gave him a lot of fireball damage. I expect at this point, if I'm Predator, I don't over defend. I let this lava hound pop, and then I delivery that along with the flying machine. I really like what he did with the spear goblins there, and this is his game.
Yep, there you go. Spear Goblins low, bats around. E-Barbs come down with that Miner. Barbarians there to respond and defend, but 840, about 1,000 HP separates the two of these guys, and right back on offense is Predator. Yes, Miner is back in cycle to defend for those Spear Goblins. Miner to the back, Fireball up high to clean all that up. One Spear Goblin survives, and a little bit more damage comes in. Mortar offensively, nice stuff here from Predator.
Yeah, very well played from Predator, and that is game over. And look, man, slowly it's looking like Predator's really playing these mortar decks to the best anyone can play them, right? These matchups aren't easy. Lava arrows is not an easy matchup.
No, they are very difficult matchups. He's playing them very smart, and he's really finding those moments where his opponent in Johnny is making mistakes, and he's punishing for him every single time. And that's what you have to do when you're in rough matchups, is you have to just sit back and defend until your opponent makes a mistake. And luckily for him, Johnny has given him just enough openings in game one and now in this game.
I don't ever want to see Johnny drop dragons, mega minion, lava all together when you're playing against Fireball. That you cannot give up that value, because not only is the dragons and the mega minions going down, you're losing a lot of tank from that lava that allows you to build better pushes over time. But since you're constantly being rushed because everything is being accelerated with those fireballs, you cannot get your feet wet in this match. You can't get them where you want it. And look, if you're Johnny, call up Abdullah, and Abdullah is going to tell you, just go all in, but just be careful. Just don't put the dragons with the mega minion, but you can definitely put the lava and then go flying machine. And once that fireball is out, then you push on through.
Right, because giving that fireball value and then making that everything left on the board is so easily respondable with that royal delivery really made Predator's decision making very elementary in that last game. It was basically like, if this gets played, I'll respond with this, and if this gets played, I'll respond with that. And it worked out, basically 9 times out of 10.
And this is it, right? This is for all the marbles. This is Predator. You got to win with mortar one more time. And I don't know if I'm Johnny here, what I have to do to make some changes here. The good thing is that there is Zap, which Zap we know isn't the greatest of all spells when you go up against lava.
Yeah, there is Zap there in response for Predator as a bit of a negative for him. And of course, for a positive for Johnny, you've got those arrows to help with the Spear Goblins and, of course, those archers. So it's going to be all about spell power. But early on, Predator up about 200.
Yeah, and this is a great start from Predator. I think it's key when you have this type of matchup to get early damage in. Double elixir will be tough as the game moves on. We saw it get a little bit sketchy for Predator in one of the pushes that Johnny did, but he was able to not play that defense or overly defend because of how much damage he had early on. So if you're Predator, that's what you're looking for before this double elixir hits. Dragons are coming in, and I see good adjustment from Johnny overall in the fact that he's not bunching up these air troops.
Now, I do have to ask, is there a reason why he's not maybe splitting his barbarians at any point to bait out the, or to respond to the mortar as opposed to dropping down his skeleton dragons?
I'm not really sure, man. I wish I could tell you, but he tossed it out the good game already. And
wow.
that's I understand why he's doing it, but it felt like he knew what was gonna happen and did it anyway, right? With that lava in the back.
Yeah, exactly. He knew exactly what door he was opening. He allowed his opponent to come in with a massive push. Miner going to go into the bottom left-hand side. E-Barb's up high for actually a really strong push here on the top left side of your screen. But as you'll see on the bottom right, even if this tower does go down, which honestly it looks like it won't, there's very little HP remaining on Johnny's bottom right-hand tower. Delivery goes in up high. Miner goes to the back. And that is going to get us to a 2-tower game. Now Predator just needs to do 400 damage. Yep, exactly.
Yeah, damage, and he has Miner Fireball Zap. So it's just a matter of time here. If he lavas in the back, he knows he loses. And there's just nowhere for him to actually play with. And that's why you see these odd pushes with a goblin cage finally spawning in that goblin, and then just dragons on the bridge.
Yeah, because he's literally trying to make anything happen, but he knows there's no way. 158 remains, a fireball gonna come in, and that will do it. Predator takes down Johnny. Played 10 games against each other, and Predator has edged him out by 1 every single time, and it's been all with the work of that mortar.
Yeah, and look, he's lucky that Johnny didn't have the same strategy of triple Sparky, because if not, it wasn't looking good for him. He got away with one with his mortar, but Predator, props to you. You actually played very, very well. And the matches that you lost, you really couldn't do much. There was no room for him to work with. When Johnny figured out how to play that Sparky, it wasn't that Predator played badly. You just can't really do anything.
Yeah, and you know what? We talked about it at the top of this set, specifically saying, you know, you can't rock 3 win conditions back to back to back. And Predator did a very, very good job proving us wrong, which he's done twice now with this mortar deck. Look, you said it. He was a former teammate of Lapicati. He learned a lot from him. Obviously, he is a big fan of mortar, and he did exactly what great mortar players have to do. Get all that minor chip damage in, understand the macro of the game, and use those mortars defensively as much as you have to. But he also found great opportunities to create offensive pressure with the mortars, but he never forced it.
He never did. And I'm curious, I hope we get to speak with him possibly in an interview. I'm not sure how proficient he is in English, but I'm very curious to see if he got scared at all, knowing that he had to play these decks again, all 3 of them, with Johnny now knowing them, and if he's planning on switching this up at all, because he did make it through, but it's not the way you want to make it through, right? The 3-2 and 3-2 again, and having to come back coming from behind is not an easy way. And no offense to Johnny or anything, but it's not going to work out the same way if you play someone like One Hive Hunter or what we saw from SB. It's just more experience and a higher quality, right?
Well, yeah, that, and also, I mean, it didn't even work out in his original group stage against Financier, right? Financier was able to take down Predator. That's why Financier is not here competing today for Group D. And while Predator does join him in that winner's bracket and will be in the international finals, it didn't work every single time, right? But it has worked 2 out of 3 times, even if 2 of those times have been against the same player. So I believe we will be talking to Predator today, and I'm excited to kind of pick his mind about that. And obviously he just got done playing, so it's going to be a couple moments. Some pretty interesting stuff today, Eric. One thing that I wasn't 100% sure of when coming into the day was what our deck selection was going to be like, in the sense of these guys knew what to expect and how would they play through it. And honestly, I think it actually worked out really, really well.
It did, and we saw mainly the experienced players use it to their advantage. I think a little bit more. They didn't save that deck that caused them a lot of trouble till the end. They kind of tried to get it out of the way early on, other than Predator, obviously, who had the same style deck over and over again. Right. But apart from Mateja, we saw the people we expected to move on actually moving on, and that's what comes down to. You know, you can't teach experience, you can't teach competitions. You just gotta, it's repetition, it's being involved in these. And I think if you give a lot of these players more and more of these tournaments and leagues that they could play in, you're gonna see better results out of them.
And I think this is a really cool thing when you look at the scoreboard here. Obviously, Denbeer with 3-0s Blairon, but otherwise we went to the final game in all of our sets. So, you know, this is a qualifier. This is not an invitational. In the initial group stage, it does feel like a lot of times you'll find one player who is far more superior than one other player. But that's only 2 of the 4 players, right? It's been really great to see all of these 2nd and 3rd place positions battle it out in 5 games in these best of 5 sets. It really shows how close they are really in skill level.
And even then, the 3-0 from Blairon wasn't badly played. The matchups were just impossible for him. It was good deck choices on the other side, but when I look at that game, Blairon actually played very well. The level, like you say, was great. We saw a lot of game 5s, which I love, especially in elimination matches, because it gets that blood pumping, that heart racing. And if I get excited, I can't imagine these players.
Yeah, it makes our job a lot easier. So let's talk to our winner of Group D in Predator. And once he comes on, Eric, I'll let you start things off because I know you are very, very excited to talk to him, as am I. I'm a big time Mortar fan, and I'm curious to see if he's going to keep rocking those things back. So we will be speaking with Predator in just a moment, as he is, again, still getting ready after closing things out. So just to remind you guys, to keep you guys up with what we've done today and where we are, Lucas GSM from Group A is now joined by Blaz. Sokol is now joined by Denbeer. Burkan will be joined by Demas. And as you just saw in Group D, we have Financier, who will be joined by Predator. Tomorrow, we are back with Groups E, F, G, and H for the exact same thing. 8 players, 4 of them getting eliminated. We're starting at the exact same time. And honestly, I'm very, very curious because these 4 groups, Eric, I felt like they were much more in the meta when you talk about deck selection without as many outliers. But we'll talk about that in just one second. Predator, how you doing today, man? Congratulations on a great, great performance and using my favorite card in the world, the Mortar.
Thanks for this. Yeah, like, you know, when I pre-submitted the decks, it was like last meta and it was season end and I played like this deck in ladder, yeah. So I just decided to take, because the rules allowed me to change only 2 cards, so I just decided to choose one deck and switch only spells in it. Yeah.
Worked out.
Yeah.
That's why I played only this deck.
Do you, moving forward, I don't expect to see 3 Mortar decks, but do you plan to continue to use a lot of Mortar, or you want to go more of the meta now?
Well, right now, yeah, probably, because, you know, it was, we should have pre-submitted decks right after the balance changes, so the meta was like not balanced. But yeah, like in the next round I will probably also use Mortar as one of my decks, but yeah, probably not sure, but probably will change other decks.
So I have to ask you then, Predator, since you played so well and you played with decks that were of the old meta, do you think that you would have actually beaten Financier on your first day of competition had you been able to play decks of the current meta?
Well, like, you know, against Financier, like two of my decks, 2 from 3, they worked against him, and I won. Like, I had elite like 2-0 against him. But the problem was the last deck that sucked a lot, you know. So like from 2-0, I lost to 3. Yeah, that's the main thing about this format, that even if you have one deck that is bad, you will not be able to win your match. So you should have 3 decks that can win.
Yeah, that's we saw it happen to a lot of players, and that's why I was a little nervous for you today with the 3 Mortars and him knowing your 3 decks. When you went down a little, were you nervous that you weren't going to be able to beat that lava deck, or you feel comfortable going up against that?
Yeah, I feel comfortable because like it's my main deck, so I'm not nervous, and it doesn't matter who do I play against. Like, I finished in top 50 ladder, so with this deck, so I don't nervous at all.
I've heard that before. Playing with Igor, I beat anyone with Mortars, so I know how you feel, and from my end, it was nice to watch it.
Yeah, Predator, congratulations today, man. Really, really great job. We're excited to see more of you as the competition goes forward, and I'm definitely excited to see more Mortar out of you. So congratulations once again, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.
Guys.
I love it, man. Confident dude. I love getting the information out of him. I had no idea that he had pre-submitted his decks, and that's why we saw decks that really didn't match up well in the current meta. You know, you talk about the bait in those decks, the ability to feed a Mother Witch. He got pretty fortunate in his matchups today, but a lot of great stuff from groups A through D today.
It's the Mortar players, man. They have this confidence that no one else has. He's like, nah, man. Yeah, he has arrows. Sure, yeah, no problem. I feel comfortable. I can beat anyone. And that's the same thing I got out of Igor. And when I speak to Crab and RF, it's the same thing Lapo would say. Don't worry, I'll beat any deck. And usually they do beat any deck, but it's that confidence you have to play with, and it shows in the gameplay.
Yeah, 100%. That's why going comfort is sometimes a great idea. And as you saw, went straight comfort with only changing spells. So Blaz 3-2s Mateja and eliminates him in a bit of a surprise, in a bit of an upset. And then Denbeer 3-0s Blairon in a very competitive back and forth best of 5. But somehow Blairon did not pick up a game in that set. Then we had this great performance between Gas and Demas, which looked like it was going to be a reverse sweep, but then Demas comes back and picks up the last 2 games, and as you just saw from Predator, a really great 5-game back and forth between him and Johnny Maloney. Eric, talk to us about tomorrow.
Yeah, we have a couple of players here that, you know, we saw great gameplay out of them, and that we've seen them in CRL in I'm sorry, I'm gonna butcher the name here, Gene Aslan. I'm not really sure. I'm going with that. He made it into the CRL plays as well. And Rufy, someone less experienced, but we saw some good games out of him. Eternity's gonna come back with that Golem deck, and as well as Abdullah. I'm very excited, right? That Abdullah gameplay has got me hyped for tomorrow. How many lavas are we gonna see? How many towers are gonna go down? Because he's relentless.
I know Eternity played Golem to some success. He played it a lot more passively and a lot more calculated than we had seen other golems being played in the tournament, but he still wasn't able to take that set. And as you just said, Abdullah, a swing for the fences Lava Hound player, which I'm sure you're very, very excited about, as should you guys be. We'll be back tomorrow at 9 a.m. Same time, same place for our last day of elimination here in the group stage. That's right, the last day of group stage elimination. We're going to be going through groups H, G, F, and E, adding into all of those winners to battle it out at the international finals for over $30,000. For Eric Benamou, I am Andrew Guy, and we are here for Gamestars League. We'll be back tomorrow morning. We'll see you then. Keep on clashing.